Rejected a popular guy who hit on me as a joke. I was the weird goth girl in high school. I owned it. Doesn't bother me at all. Honestly, I see why I was a target for this. So, sophomore year of high school, I get a text from a guy. How he got my number is still a mystery to me, but it gives me the ick. He was a football player and therefore pretty popular by default. He was very much sliding into my DMs, as we would call it now, but this was 2007, so we still flirted via text. He started off by making me guess who he was, which was super weird and an instant red flag. After a lot of back and forth, him being all flirty, he finally told me. I was like, what the heck? I hadn't said 2 words to this guy since the 7th grade. Total cold call. But then he just starts your general, oh, I think you're really cute, etc. Then, after a polite but not very assertive decline, the messages start to get more graphic. Thankfully, I was spared any pics. He drops the bomb that we should hook up and keeps trying to entice me into coming over. Now, I was your typical goth kid who was very anti-conformist, admittedly to a cringy degree, which included wanting nothing to do with jocks. I got super angry that he was hitting on me at all, especially since he was being super gross about it. So, temper got the best of me, and basically, I tore him a new one and said things like, "You're gross, why would I want anything to do with you?" Just generally started roasting the heck out of him for something along the lines of being an unoriginal, pathetic jock who was going to peak in high school. He didn't take this well. Not because he actually liked me and was hurt, but apparently because this was all meant to be a joke, where the text would have been spread around the school to embarrass me. He allegedly had multiple friends over that were in on this at the time. They were also trying to lure me over to his house to collectively laugh at me. As a couple of commenters have pointed out, there may have been even more nefarious plans, and I could have ended up being assaulted, for all I know, had I gone over. If you'd known them, you'd agree these guys were definitely the type, oh goodness. Basically, his plan backfired in the worst possible way though. To make matters worse for him, his friends started laughing at him and then leaked the texts, saying he was clearly a loser because he just got rejected by the school weirdo. This was perpetuated even further by my friends because they were so mad at what he was trying to do to me. They spread that stuff to anyone who would listen. As you can see, in the end, the revenge was done unintentionally on my end, and then continued by his own friends, plus mine, from there on out. Seriously, I don't know how you recover from getting rejected by high school me. RIP your reputation, my guy. Thanks for reading. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. OP's left a quick edit on the end here saying, to anyone who thinks I'm toxic because of my reaction, I'll make it clear, I did tell him multiple times before it got graphic that I don't do the dating thing while in high school, which was 100% true. The gross text was just my breaking point. He crossed a boundary I'd made clear, and he was being disrespectful, even if he had genuinely liked me. Thank you and good night. And also, people have been asking if he actually did peak in high school. I don't know much about what's going on in his life because his Facebook is private, but I can tell you, he's 32 with a massive receding hairline, and he's really let himself go. A receding hairline, you say? Well, how embarrassing is that? That could never be me. It's definitely not one of the reasons why I'm wearing a hat. Just shut up, you. Don't make any comments. I can see you. You're going down to the comments. Leave me alone. I mean, actually, you guys tell me. Fuck you, I've put that hat back on. I mean, actually, you guys tell me. Fuck you, I've put that hat back on. Okay, if I'm going to take my hat off, at least let me do my hair. But talking about the actual story now, I mean, we all know people like this, and we knew people like this at school. They're just terrible, right? Because they're cool and they're playing the football team, everyone likes them. But in reality, like when they leave school, they realize they were just jerks. I mean, some of them do anyway. But yeah, I mean, like just doing this sort of stuff to bully someone that is less popular than you is just so poor. And I mean, that comment about the assault, I wouldn't jump to that conclusion, but we've seen it, right? We've seen it in schools before. That sort of thing can happen with popular kids. So yeah, I don't think that is too ridiculous to say. And you're right. You've got to be careful with these sort of people. As for the revenge itself, I know you didn't necessarily mean it, but well done. I mean, like, you stuck to your guns is the main thing. And yeah, fair play to you. You were probably a bit at the start like, oh my God, I'm getting attention from this really popular guy. This is really cool. But no, you still stuck to your principles and were like, okay, I've said I'm not doing the dating thing in school. Why are you sending me this graphic stuff? That's disgusting. I don't care who you are. And, you know, doing that and yeah, maintaining your rules in your head and saying, yeah, this can be this person, but it doesn't really matter, has actually stopped you from being embarrassed, I suppose, and in the end has actually embarrassed him. So well done. If that's not a moral of sticking to your principles, I don't know what is. Make fun of my mental health? Good luck getting into college. I, an 18-year-old man, was in my junior year of high school. I'm not going to get into it, but I ended up in the mental hospital for trying to unalive myself. I'd lost one of the family members who accepted me for being gay. The only extracurricular I had was theatre. The theatre director treated me like the mum I never had, until it came to shows, at which point everyone was told how worthless we were. Not to mention, I'd been bullied relentlessly, being gay and in Oklahoma of all places. I came back from the hospital medicated and ready to finish high school. Some background. I'd spent my whole high school career trying to become the president of Drama Club. I was the only one to become inducted as a thespian as a freshman and was practically ready to be the next president. The votes came in and I lost. I would have been okay losing to Ben, fake name, until I found out that they'd been telling everyone that I was unstable and told people I went to the mental hospital for drug abuse. I've never abused drugs or done any drugs for that matter. What's worse, when I confronted my theatre teacher about it, she told me everyone has a right to free speech, and then proceeded to tell me that maybe I shouldn't have even reached out for help since this would have prevented my loss of the presidential race. Not to mention, I had police raid my car, my locker, and even my house. My parents thought I was on meth or something, since police kept coming to the house. At the first police visit, they quite literally bust down our front door. I even got beat up in the parking lot of my work because a known druggie didn't believe that I didn't have anything on me. I almost got fired from my one source of income because of this ordeal, all because he made up this lie and everyone believed it and went talking. I was fuming, and I found out the top 10 colleges fought this Ben, and I emailed them all the screenshots of what he had said about me. His plan was to go to mostly liberal arts colleges, and he'd even received thousands in scholarship money. All of them rescinded their acceptance when they received the proof. Correspondence was very slow between me and the colleges. It took them forever to confirm that these screenshots weren't doctored in any way, but by the time it had been confirmed, most of the application deadlines had passed. He hasn't been able to get into college. I feel slightly bad as I found out his mum was a special ed teacher, and hearing this actually told Ben that when he turns 18, he will need to find a place to live on his own. He has nowhere to live and no future plans. Don't make fun of people's mental health or make up lies for the purpose of winning. I haven't talked to anyone in the theatre group since. All of them considered me a druggie and I became a pariah. I feel a little remorse, but not enough. Yeah, you know what? I get that. Like, it's good revenge, but still, it's not enough, is it? Like, this person has done a terrible, terrible thing, Ben. Making fun of someone's mental health just to win. Like, it's disgusting. And I also sort of blame everyone else for believing what he said when there was no truth to it at all. Like, yeah, it's this horrible thing to do, and I hope you're doing better. I mean, the good news is that Ben's prospects now are not looking great. And that is deserved, by the way, because making up horrible lies about someone just to win and become president, like, who cares? Now for our next revenge story. Pager bombing a bully in 99. A few decades ago, when life was simpler and I was in school, a friend of mine was routinely bullied by a jerk. We were in 8th grade, and so was the jerk. We were the losers of our school and didn't have much recourse. We complained, but it was the 90s, and as long as no one had any bruises, the school didn't care what happened. My friends and I were also geeks who were very creative. So our retaliation was made after getting his home phone number. We did a few prank calls, but then we came up with the perfect crime. Pager bombing the kid's home phone. We found out one person's pager number and discovered that the sequential numbers next to it were all pagers. Then we proceeded to save the bully's number in the quick dial phone settings, and dialing by hand, we called a few hundred pagers and left this a-hole's family phone line as the callback number. We did this every day for a good week in a row, and the kid's phone line was off the hook for the next few weeks due to non-stop calls. He shared that phone line with his entire family, who were livid, naturally. It was clear that we, the geeks, had done the damage, but there was no proof to be found. Instead of escalating things to get our butts kicked, this actually broke the bully's spirit. I assume his parents found out why he was a target, and we just denied any involvement. Just goes to show, there's many creative ways to mess up someone's social life without anything being directly traceable. This is also a reminder The email address and text send spoofing is very doable. Now, to be honest, I think that I am just on the edge of the age where I have no idea what pages are, and I'm not quite sure what that means still. I think it's a US thing as well, so I'm a little bit in the dark. So, you older folk, let me know in the comments down below. Am I misinterpreting things here? But I feel like it's just spamming a number and then just, it being on different websites. Almost like when you're on a list, when you sign up to some email thing and you're on a list, and then loads of other, you get those spam emails. I think it's a bit like that. Forgive me though for being so young and innocent. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below. Nonetheless, very good revenge. I'm not sure about saying that the email address and text send spoofing is very doable. I wouldn't recommend that unless someone is a bully. Go for it. Frick you, Jeff. I'll start with some information relevant to the story and about me. 1. I'm 29 and this happened when I was 22. 2. My dad was a private investigator and he started taking me with him to work when I was 16. Straight after high school, I became one as well. I freaking love my job. 3. I have a motorcycle. Really good for stalking people. Interesting. I suppose private investigators... would you use the word stalk there? It's a pretty negative word. Spy on, perhaps? I don't know. But anyway, so let's begin. Everything started after I came back from Japan. It was a quick holiday trip. I'm talking 3 weeks. The trip itself isn't relevant to the story, but when I was in Japan, I bought a pair of jeans. I'm talking about jeans especially made for me. A $600 pair. It took 2 weeks to make them, and I freaking loved them. I still have them, and they still have the cigarette stain that started all of this. When I came back to Poland, I was proudly wearing those jeans 3 to 5 times a week. I remember it like it was yesterday. 7:05 a.m. I woke up, hopped in the shower, ate breakfast, and saw that I didn't have any meat in the fridge. I still had almost 40 minutes of free time, and I lived like a 2-minute walk from a pretty big supermarket. I'd been a regular there for 2 years. The cashiers knew me, and I knew them. And there was this one guy that worked there. Let's name him Jeff. Frickin' 150 centimeters tall, 40 kg max, chain smoker. All the workers smoked in the same spot. So, I'm walking to the store, and to get there from my place, you have to pass the smoking area. As I'm walking by, this dude throws his lit cigarette in my direction, and of course it hits my brand frickin' new perfect jeans, leaving a black burn mark on the material. I look at the guy. He stares at me. 5 seconds. As in really, 5 full seconds. I ask, "Are you gonna say sorry?" "I don't care." Then he opens a back door that leads to the store storage area. I was fuming. So, I bought the meat, came back home, and I tried to wash my jeans. But it was over. The stain stayed forever. I even asked my grandma after 2 days of trying to get it out, and she couldn't do anything. So I knew, this is it. That was the moment I started planning my revenge. Stage 1. Stalking. Okay, it feels to me as if OP doesn't really care about the negative connotations of that word. Maybe that is just the word that they use. It's worth saying as well that OP is Polish, so his English isn't the best. He said that himself at the start of this. So I know, I don't want to say stalking, but let's go with it. That's what OP said. I wanted to know everything about him. What he drives, where he lives, if he has a girlfriend or a wife, what his role at the store is, where he goes after work, his habits, everything. At the time, I didn't know what I wanted to do to him, but I knew I would get revenge. Stage 2. Unemployment. After 6 weeks of stalking, I had a lot of info. Jeff lived in an apartment 50 minutes away from the store. He had a wife, married for over a decade, no kids, and drove a Honda Civic. His workdays looked pretty much the same. 5 a.m. start the day, drive to work. 5:50 arrive at the store. 7 the store opens. 40 cigarette breaks during work. The dude smoked 2 packs a day. That is insane. 3 p.m. usually gets back home. Sometimes he ran small errands, gas station, post office, typical stuff. Saturdays were similar but with more hours. Sundays were his day off. He worked at a garage out of town with his dad, I think. The guy looked like an older version of Jeff. I decided the easiest way to mess with him was to get him fired. Since he was responsible for opening the store, if he was late by more than 30 minutes, he was screwed. The store wouldn't be ready before 7 a.m. So I started simply, stealing his gas at night. The next day, he didn't show up in time. The store opened 20 minutes late. I knew the manager was annoyed. I did that 3 times a week, hoping that after 2 weeks, he'd be fired. He didn't get fired. Instead, they gave him a private parking spot with a security gate and a huge fence, so I had to come up with something else. I decided to just screw up his car entirely. It was Monday. He was coming back from work and I followed on my motorcycle, keeping a bit of a distance. He stopped at a bakery, so did I. When he went inside, I dumped a bunch of sugar into his gas tank. A few kilometers later, I happily watched as he had to pull over. His wife didn't have a car, and I don't think he could afford anything new. 3 weeks later, after struggling with public transport and being late every single day, he got fired. I've got to say, this guy so far is absolutely unhinged. All he did was just throw a cigarette butt. And you know, we're not even getting close to being started here, guys, to be honest. Look at stage 3, divorce. So, he got fired. I asked myself, is that enough? I spent so much time stalking and screwing with him, and now he found a new job somewhere else. I wasn't going to see his butt again. I decided that Sunday would be the last day. I'd just cut the electricity at the garage where he worked with his dad. A final hit. But he made my day. That Sunday, he broke his routine. He didn't go to the garage. He went to a motel. And guess what? Jeff called some hookers to that motel. I took pictures. That was enough. Pictures of him getting into the room with the hooker, timestamped. Pictures of him kissing her when she left 40 minutes later. And the dumb idiot even paid her at the door. All of this caught on camera. I waited 5 days, and then I sent the pictures to his wife's work email. A month later, I checked on how Jeff was doing. He still didn't have a car. His wife was no longer living with him, probably divorced. And he still smoked 2 packs a day. I don't regret anything. F you, Jeff. If you had just said sorry instead of I don't care, I wouldn't have done any of that. My genes are still effed. Oh my goodness, I actually love that story. I don't know who I love more. Jeff, for doing one tiny thing, not apologizing, and then having his life destroyed, or this unhinged Redditor who has just gone completely off the scales. Okay, so yeah. The definition of unhinged is what I'm going to say. But I've really enjoyed that story. Going to be honest, that's up there for me. Like, a lot of the time people will ask me, what's the best revenge story you've ever read? And I can't ever normally think of one that just springs to mind. But I actually think I will remember this one because it's the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, stalking somebody for weeks, then getting them fired from their job by stealing their petrol and then putting sugar in their car. And then sort of, I mean, the last one, the divorce, he did that himself, Jeff. But you were still the one that facilitated and made his wife aware of that. So, yeah, crazy stuff. I'm going to remember this story for a long time, I think. And I think there's a good chance it might make the top 10 revenge stories of 2025 when we get to that at the end of the year. Okay, after that, let's move on to our next revenge story. It's going to be tough to top that. Revenge for my sister. So here's the deal. My sister, who is 46, is dating this douchebag, 29, who she thought she was in an exclusive relationship with for the last 4 months. Because, according to the two of them, they were. Here's the kicker. That SOB has been married for the last 3 years. Yeah, we all just found out tonight. I would love to get back at that POS. We obviously have his cell phone number, but what we'd really like to do is get a hold of his wife's number and have my sister do the honors. Now, they're no contact mutually, so getting it from him is not an option. We don't know anything about her since we all found out she exists as of tonight. We just need a way to figure out how do we score that cell number. Ideas? Go. Alright guys, get your comments in down below. How would you go about finding out someone's cell number? I don't think it'd be very hard at all. I think as shown by the previous story, all you got to do is find out where they work and then, you know, it's really not that hard. But anyway, let's get into the update for this story. The call was finally made to Marcella, Maxie's wife. There were no hysterical screams. No, you can't prove it, remarks. No interrogations, just silence. Then she went into how they met, how long they dated, words that were said to one another, and finally all the places they went to. In the less than the 10 minutes they were on the phone, she texted the screenshots of the phone records and the 2 pics of the two of them. The only thing Marcella said throughout the conversation were, "Who is this?" and "God." My sister told Marcella she can call her anytime and that she was sorry the whole thing happened. That was it. No name calling or tears. I'm sure though she was in shock and disbelief. By now, she's sideways in hurt and anger. Thank you for your support and ideas. Everyone involved received an education. Interestingly, someone said it in the comments below. It should be fairly easy to find her number. Go to Being Verified or Truthfinder or one of those websites. Pay $30 to look up the boyfriend. There'll be an area that shows relatives and she should be listed. Then look her up. Really? Is it as easy as that? Wow. I mean, I would probably, yeah, as I said, do work email or something, but that seems pretty easy. Maybe there are just sort of places where you can pay and find someone's number. Somebody else said, write his number in every bathroom store you can find. Use it for bar napkins and pinboards. Who's having a good time now? There we go. And then somebody replied saying, turn his phone number into a QR code. Oh, add some text to it. Lost dog or free hamburger at McDonald's or the like. Have this printed on stickers and paste them on light poles, restrooms, etc. and enjoy. Now that is brilliant. I mean, that is just a great idea. It's just a great idea. Opie replied to that saying, absolutely love this. It's brilliantly diabolical. I wish I'd met you 10 years ago when I went through a similar thing and needed such a wonderful idea. Again, kind of like the paging advice, like it's really easy to spam. Wouldn't recommend doing this. I mean, I'm not sure about this advice, but yeah, if you want to do it, I'm not going to stop you. It'd be very funny. Somebody else in the comments said, and this is before we got into the update, show up at his job and announce you are pregnant loudly before you even try to reach out to the wife. I mean, yeah, there are things you can do before you called her, but sounds like that was a very sad call. Marcella didn't really have any idea. I feel bad for both of you, but what can you do about douchebags like you said, like this? Now for our penultimate revenge story. I put my flatmate's dirty dishes in a vent above his bed. I am a 22-year-old guy. I'm a graduate school student and I have a condo which I lease out to 3 other guys. We all have our own rooms and a shared kitchen and lounge. I've been close friends with 2 of the guys for years and recently met the flatmate in question, who I'll call Ethan. I met Ethan in class and he seemed like a nice and generally entertaining guy. So when he mentioned to me that he broke up with his girl that he'd been staying with and didn't really have a stable living situation, I said he could move into my free room as long as he pays rent. He agreed and it was great for a couple of months. But then I'd noticed there would be a lot more dirty dishes in the sink that wouldn't be done. For reference, I have a dishwasher and there is a ubiquitous rule to do your own dishes. I'm not a neat freak or anything, but dishes in particular are a huge pet peeve for me. I noticed that for the most part, the dishes were Ethan's, so I brought it up to him once and he said he'd do better, but not much really changed. So one day, I just unscrewed the vent above his head in his bed and I put some dirty dishes up there, and I kept doing so over a period of a couple of weeks. Eventually he figured it out and got really annoyed because he's been using air fresheners and incense and the smell still won't come out. He's a great guy otherwise, so I still want to be friends with him, but I just can't figure out how to get this man's dishes into the dishwasher. Yeah, not really too much you can do about this, I think, apart from do stuff like you've done. I mean, you can only ask someone a limited amount of times, and if they're not going to change, then you need to do more drastic things. This is a good idea. I think after this, he probably will do his dishes, and that's the eventual aim, isn't it? To get someone like this to do their dishes. I will say that some people take a bit longer to sort of cotton onto the fact that you need to do your dishes. I probably wasn't the best at that when I was in uni, whereas now I would never not do my dishes. So, you know, it can take a bit of time. I don't think it's like, oh, this person doesn't do their dishes, they're horribly lazy and they don't care, etc. They're probably just like at a different stage in their life. That sounds a bit stupid, but I just know that was the case for me. Like early on in uni when I was 18 or whatever, I just didn't do them as much, which sounds dumb. I don't know. I was younger. That was like 8 years ago. Now I'm an expert dishwasher. Although it does help that we actually have a dishwasher. But you have a dishwasher. That's the thing that's interesting. Like it's so easy to put your plates in a dishwasher. Washing them up, a little bit harder. Not that hard, but still, it requires some effort. Putting plates and dishes in a dishwasher, that requires 0 effort. Yeah, I don't know. But give him the benefit of the doubt. Let him cook now. Quite literally. Now for our final revenge story of this one. Ultimate revenge on my sister's cheating ex. My sister's husband cheated on her with a friend of hers. Then he screwed my sis out of their house and most of the money in the divorce. She was devastated, but eventually she moved on. Meanwhile, the ex married the mistress, who he'd gotten pregnant while still married to my sis. Wow, what a first paragraph. This guy sounds like a legend. A few years later, my sister was cleaning up her email accounts when she noticed she still had her ex's account on her computer. Out of curiosity, she logged in and saw that he'd received an automated email from Ashley Madison saying his account is now active. Remember that website where married people connected to cheat on their spouses? That website, the fact that that existed, by the way, is unbelievable. I can't quite believe that was a thing, but fair play. And you know what else is crazy? I know for sure that at least a few people listening to this right now have been on that website. Shout out to you guys. Anyway, she went on Ashley Madison, and sure enough, he had an account. Lesson: always change your email passwords after a divorce. When she told me, I had the most devious idea. I created a fake Ashley Madison account, pretending I was a very attractive married woman in his city who wanted to cheat. I sent him a wink, he bit, and we began talking. And then planned on getting together for sex. He got very graphic in what he wanted to do, and how his wife never wanted to put out. He also included a lot of detail about his life, his job, negative comments about his wife, stuff only he could know. I strung him along for weeks. We exchanged well over 100 messages. Finally, we made plans to get together at a motel near his house. Of course, nobody showed up, but I sent him a message late that night, thanking him for the fantastic sex. Then I printed out the entire message exchange and I sent it to his wife's office. She obviously bought it. He was livid and sent angry messages to my fake account, but I convinced him that my husband had somehow broken into my account, and that's who mailed it to her. He believed me. She left him, got the house and full custody of their kid and alimony. This was years ago, and he's never remarried and still lives in a trashy apartment. And he's got no idea who did this to him. No regrets. Well, I reckon you can actually tell him now, because that will be like a huge moment of victory for you. And also, you've not done anything like illegal. Like, he can't say, oh, it was you, therefore blah blah blah, I'm gonna sue you, like, you know, go to the police, whatever. You've not done anything wrong. So I would tell him and just sort of like, yeah, revel in that feeling of him now knowing it was you. I don't know, like, let me know in the comments down below. What do you think? Do you think this dude would be more annoyed now knowing it was you? Or do you think him not knowing for his entire life will just play on his mind for decades and that would be more annoying? I'm not sure. But maybe you just let him suffer forever and it's going to be on his mind forever. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. My neighbor blocked my driveway one too many times, so I had his car towed during his Tinder dates. For context, my neighbor is the type of guy who thinks rules are for other people. An arrogant 6-foot-something hunk in his mid-20s. Wow, is he talking about me? He constantly parks in front of my driveway, fully blocking it, despite multiple warnings, notes, and in-person, hey man, seriously, stop conversations. His excuse? I'm just here for a bit. A bit apparently means an eternity, 3 to 5 hours every dang time. Last week, I come home and surprise, he's there again, blocking my driveway with his crusty silver sedan. I see him through his window getting ready, cologne and everything. He's going out. I decide tonight's the night. So I do what I should have done weeks ago. I call a tow truck. No warnings, no notes, get it towed straight up. About 45 minutes later, I'm sitting on my porch drinking a beer when a random girl walks up the sidewalk, clearly dressed for a date. She knocks on his door, he comes out smiling, then sees his car is gone. She's confused. He's flipping out. He starts looking around like someone robbed him. I casually say, if you're looking for your car, it got towed. You were blocking my driveway again. He tries to argue, but the girl just says, wait, you parked in front of his driveway? He tries to explain, but she just says, wow, that's trashy, and walks off. I haven't seen him block my driveway since, and he never called another girl home after that. His confidence took a major hit. So ultimately, he blocked you and then you blocked him. That's fair enough. And can I just say as well, shout out to this woman for knowing that despite the fact that she's going on a date with this guy and maybe if they've met before, likes him, who knows if it's a first date or not, probably is given that she's gone to his house. Knowing that he was in the wrong and that you were in the right, and she clearly has the moral compass to say, you know what, I don't want to date this guy right now. I'm leaving. Honestly, you saved her so much time realizing that he's just a piece of trash. Talk about blocking? How about car blocking? Hurt my friend? Good luck with your education. Back in the before times, when the internet was still a new thing with lots of potential, I was enrolled at my local junior college. A little into the semester, I moved in with my girlfriend so we could both save on rent. I'll call my girlfriend Lucy for the purpose of this post. One night, Lucy says she invited a friend from one of her classes for a game night. Sounded good to me. We invited a couple of other friends and it was a really fun night. Surprisingly, it turned out her friend, Sarah, was someone I knew from high school. We weren't close friends, but we knew each other and got along fine. After that night, Sarah was invited over pretty frequently for dinner, game nights, or to watch a movie. She even brought her boyfriend over a couple of times, Jay, but he never quite fit in. He'd be quiet or standoffish, wouldn't engage much, and just seemed like he never wanted to be there. It was clear that no one really felt comfortable having him there, but we invited him to be polite to Sarah. Fortunately, he only came over 2 or 3 times and found an excuse to refuse every other time. A month or 2 after this all started, Sarah called my girlfriend, crying, and asked if she could come over. Of course, we said yes. The story that was relayed was Jay was getting very upset with Sarah for coming over to our place so frequently and accused her of cheating on him. She never clarified if he thought she was cheating with me, Lucy, or both of us, but any option was ridiculous and never happened. But he confronted her and started verbally assaulting her, calling her all kinds of nasty names. At one point, she tried to walk past him to leave and he shoved her back. This caused her to trip over a coffee table, fall, and get a huge bruise on her butt and lower back. Lucy told me about the bruise as Sarah had shown her. I didn't see it for myself. Sarah swore up and down that he had never physically assaulted her before, and she believed it was just an accident. But I was annoyed. I wanted revenge. You don't mess with my friends, and you don't assault women. I wanted to beat the F out of him, but while I'm a very big guy, I've never been in a fight, and I'm not a violent person. But a revenge plan formed in my mind. At the time, I was working in the administration building of the school as a student employee. As part of my job, I could access anyone's student records, their fees, and their class schedule. The date was fast approaching that was the last possible day to drop or add classes without penalty or specific permission. So, I looked Jay up in the system, got his student ID number and the other information that I needed, and I put my plan into motion. On the last day to change schedules, I used the dedicated enrollment phones in the administration building. Internet class scheduling wasn't a thing that was set up yet. And I cancelled all of his classes. Not only that, but I went through and added every class I could find that had a course fee. If you owed a debt at the school, you couldn't get copies or your transcripts or anything else. Something that I didn't mention was that Jay was also a foreign student and couldn't stay in the country if he wasn't enrolled with a certain number of units. I wish I could give more info about the fallout, but as I didn't want this to get tracked back to me, I didn't tell anyone, nor did I pull up his records again for quite a while. I did get a little payoff though. Sarah was really worried about seeing him again. She'd broken up with him the night after he pushed her, as they had an English class together on Tuesdays. She said that on Tuesday he was there, but there was also someone new standing in the class. He was standing because there weren't enough seats. The teacher, seeing that there were more people than should be, held roll. And guess who wasn't on it? You're right, it was Jay. Apparently, after I dropped all his classes, someone on the waitlist got in. Jay tried to argue with the teacher, but as Teach had the official class roster and Jay wasn't on it, there was nothing he could do. Sarah said she never saw Jay in that class again. I don't know much more about what happened. Lucy and I eventually broke up, so I didn't see Sarah very often after that. After a while, I did look up Jay's class schedule, and all of the classes with course fees were gone, but he didn't have any other classes on the books either. I wanted to assume he was kicked out of school, but I didn't try to confirm it. Either way, Sarah didn't have to have a class with him, and while he probably deserved more, he was definitely inconvenienced and possibly kicked out of school. Sometimes I worry I was too harsh, but then I remember that he deserved it. Mess with me, but not my friends. Okay, great revenge, OP, and in my opinion, you weren't too harsh at all, and yeah, arguably he did deserve more. I suppose the question is, and we don't know because, as you said, you wanted to keep a low profile so you weren't caught up in this and people didn't understand or realize that you were involved. But if Jay was kicked out of the country, and we don't know if he was or wasn't, which is annoying, then this is top tier revenge. If he wasn't and he just got kicked out of the school, hopefully had to pay those course fees as well, it's still good revenge. You've still ruined his college experience, and That set him back a number of years in life, I'm sure. But if he was kicked out of the country, then that is next level revenge. It's also important to remember, guys, that this happened a long time ago, decades ago, because I was thinking there, and you might be thinking the same thing. Did Jay not raise this as a problem and say, look, clearly something's happened here. Can we not sort something out? And you also might be thinking, how can a school employee have this much administrative power? But I don't know. Back in the day when the internet wasn't so much of a thing, I feel like this could definitely have happened, to be honest with you. Pick me to be eliminated? Two can play. Back in 2015, I, a 37-year-old woman, was working as a manufacturing engineer for a fishing company. I'd been there for almost 5 years and worked with new packaging line implementation mainly. But the process engineer had quit, so I picked up that job as well. I was working 16-hour days most of the time and on call 24/7, but I felt that I'd be able to rise in the ranks if I showed my dedication to the company. Cue douchehead manager. For some reason, he didn't like me, and he would try to make me look incompetent and weak in front of other departments. He criticized my ideas, but then gave the ideas to others to do. Everyone else worried about me and the hours I was putting in and drinking 2 to 3 monsters a day, but my manager just wanted more. Then came the first of the month. I came into work and started back on a line teardown that needed to be done. I was wrenching away when I started hearing people being called into HR. I was confused. What was going on? I went to talk to my work besties and they were just as confused. As I walked back to my cubicle, I saw one of the women from accounting crying as she carried out a box of her stuff while being escorted. I remember hearing her name being called. My heart fell to my stomach. Then, at around 8:30 a.m, I heard it. My name being called. I thought, well, so much for dedication. I walked into HR, got the position elimination lecture, and was informed I had no job, no insurance, and 4 months of pay for just 1 month shy of 5 years. I was destroyed. I had never received a bad review or even a PIP, but my manager had to pick one person from his department, and lo and behold, he chose me. I had to be escorted back to my desk to pack up, tears streaming down my face, and my packaging ME shouting, "This is BS," as he had to walk me out. The manager wouldn't even give me the chance to say anything to him, just made his second in command walk me out. And the kicker, my birthday was the next day. As the day progressed, I heard about more people being let go, at least one person from each department and a couple of managers. They were close to retirement. Out of them all, 90% were women, including a couple of work besties. We found that the conglomerate that owned the company was selling it, and we were the fallout for making the books look good. I still didn't understand why I was chosen from the engineering department. There was one person who was 1 year from retirement who would have gladly left, his words to me, and another on a PIP. He told me so I could help him. I was shattered and lost. So I took 1 day to grieve and get drunk with my besties on my birthday. Then I hit the job sites. 1 month later, I started a new job that I absolutely loved. But here is where it gets good. One morning, about 6 months after I started my new job, the plant director called me into his office. His office was only about 15 feet from my cubicle, so we got to know each other, and he was a pretty cool guy, so I walked in with a "What's up?" and a smile. He looks up and says, "I have a resume for the plant manager position. You used to work at that fishing place, didn't you?" I said, "I did." "Well, did you know or work with douchehead manager?" I said, "Yeah, he was my manager." "Well, how was he to work for and with?" I smiled and said, "He was an okay person, but he was a really great bus driver, if you get what I mean." He smiled, picked up the paper and showed it to me. It was douchehead's resume, and he'd been let go the same day I was. I was in shock. And then the best thing happened. The director took the paper, ripped it up and threw it away. He said that was all he needed to know, and I walked out with my jaw on the floor. Douchehead had been unemployed since that day, and unknowingly, I got my petty revenge. Okay, so just reading through the comments, somebody said, "What do you mean by bus driver?" Because I'm going to be honest, I had no idea as well. Throws people under the bus. Okay, I get it. A bus driver is someone who throws others under the bus so often, he's become proficient and efficient at it, and now just lines up his co-workers and drives the bus over them. He has become the bus driver. That is how often he's been throwing people under the bus. Wow. quite a cool little metaphor there. Might use it. The one thing I would say about this story, and I think we've seen this before, is I wish you had interviewed him, or you had said to your manager there, who, by the way, I've got to say, your manager's a great guy. Like, if you've got a manager who will trust your opinion that easily and you know, cares that much about you and what your values are and your thoughts on other people, to say, okay, if this one person has had bad experiences before, then even if they're really qualified, seem good on paper, whatever, no, we're not going to touch this person, then, you know, you've got a good relationship with your manager, that is for sure. But I do kind of feel like maybe it would have been unreal if you got him in and then you were sitting in on the interview, your manager, you, and your old manager, and then as your old manager walks in, he sees you. Like, that just would have been so good, but probably unrealistic, to be honest, and would have wasted a lot of people's time, including obviously the company that you're currently working for now. Don't care about the douche head, obviously, but probably that was not realistic, but would have been amazing. Nonetheless, phenomenal revenge. I set up numerous fake dates for my cheating boyfriend. 8 years ago, I entered a relationship with someone who was almost too good to be true. He listened to everything I had to say. We had so much in common. I felt finally understood and really seen by someone as who I really am. I opened up to him more than I intended to, way too soon. If it sounds too good to be true, it usually is. Now I know that what he did to me back then was love bombing. Some examples of his techniques. The second month of dating, he took me to an uninhabited island with his small boat, set up a gorgeous lunch he prepared at home, served limoncello. We went diving and he found a giant shell and gave it to me as a token of his love. Shortly thereafter, he took me to his childhood home, showed me pictures of his parents who were deceased, and gave me his old toy he claimed was his fondest childhood memory. I was sure he was the one. I might be in the wrong here, guys, but that sounds really nice to me. I know that love bombing is a real thing, and people that love bomb do stuff like this, but are you allowed to do this and not be a love bomber if you do really love someone? Surely you are. Anyway, however, soon things started to change. At first, it was the little things. He'd make a cynical comment here and there about the way I looked or something I said, and that made me feel very insecure. He'd flirt with other women in front of me to make me jealous. I'd cry and he'd apologize and temporarily revert to his old romantic, loving self. But his outbursts became worse and worse, and the amount of pleading with him and convincing him of my love was growing each time. I felt exhausted and drained by the constant need to prove my love for him, just to earn a little bit of affection that he initially showed me. I once got out of the shower and caught him browsing an online dating site. He said he made sure that I saw what he was checking out to see if I get jealous and controlling again. I didn't believe him. He was actually very bad with computers, and early on in the relationship, he once called me on the phone and asked for my help with setting up an online account for playing chess. I tried to guide him through the process of setting up a username and password at this particular site, which was somewhat more complicated than these things usually are, and he grew impatient and just told me the username and password he wanted to use. I remembered that, and I tried this username and password on the dating site he visited. I immediately got into his profile, and what I saw broke me. Not only was he chatting up other women, but it was clear from some of the conversations that he had met other women and had sex with them. Some of the conversations contained intimate information about me and what he was dissatisfied about with me. What I read hurt so much that I cried on the floor like a little baby. By this point, I knew he wasn't perfect and that our relationship was far from perfect, but I was clinging on to that initial phase of our relationship, which made me feel the happiest I had been in my life. Now I had to deal with the fact that it was all fake. I cried for hours, and then something in me broke, and I decided to get even. I set up a fake online dating profile, the first of the many to come. I started chatting with him, and after a few days, he suggested meeting. I feigned hesitation, but he insisted. I reluctantly agreed to meet him in a large coffee house. I went there, half disguised, and I sat where I knew he wouldn't see me. I half hoped that he wouldn't come and that it was all just a bad dream. I called him 10 minutes before the meeting with the mystery woman to ask where he was and if we could meet. He said that he couldn't because he had an errand to run. My heart sank. So I actually called him 10 minutes before the meeting with the mystery woman to ask where he was and if we could meet. But he said that he couldn't because he had an errand to run. My heart sank. I kept my eyes glued to the door, and sure enough, there he was. He came in, sat, and waited. At first, I thought I was getting a panic attack because I was so distraught, but I managed to calm myself down. He first waited patiently, then started fidgeting and looking at every woman that came in. And then, as if by divine intervention, a woman came in who looked just as what I described myself online. He immediately came up to her and said something. She dismissed him, but he was persistent, at which point she got agitated with him and told him to leave her alone. He waited for another half an hour and then left. That afternoon, I sent him a message through the dating site that I was indeed the woman he spoke to, that I saw him, found him physically unattractive, but lacked the courage to discuss it in public, so I faked not knowing who he was. Oh my gosh. I apologized profusely and he said it was okay, no hard feelings, but I knew it wasn't okay. He was very self-aware and narcissistic. No way he was unbothered by that. So, I did it to him again, and again, and again. Sometimes he'd be stood up, sometimes the woman would reschedule and then he'd be stood up. Sometimes she'd cancel at the last minute. At least 10 dates went south. I decided it was enough and that it was time to break up. I did it in public. I told him it was over because he was a cheating SOB. He denied everything and tried to gaslight me and spin the story as me being the jealous freak. I then looked at him and said, all those failed dates, all me. And I just let that sink in. He asked how, and I told him his password, and I left. A few months after the breakup, he wrote a lengthy email saying that what I did to him was ingenious, that it proved I was the love of his life, and that he completely lost the will for online dating because he both fears and hopes that every new woman is me. Wow. I never answered this or any other attempt he made to contact me, and he still makes such attempts even now, years later. What a story. I mean, this is just phenomenal. I don't know if online dating is that good. Some people really like it, some people don't. It's a controversial topic. I've had some good experiences and some bad experiences. Actually, not really that many bad experiences. Well, I suppose the entire question is, how does it affect society as a whole? But we're not going to get into that in this episode. The next one, maybe. But anyway, the point is, this guy is never going to go on an online dating app ever again in his life. He has been scarred in the most brilliant way possible. And he deserves it, by the way. Imagine that, like, you are on a date. Well, you're not on the date, but you think you're going to go on a date with somebody. They walk in. You're like, is that them? I'm not sure. It looks like them. You say to them, oh, are you here for a date with me? Like, Pauline, how are you? They go, don't know who that is, because they actually don't know who that is or who you are. They're just a random girl. And then later, you think that person has texted you saying, sorry, you were just so ugly in real life, but I faked that I didn't know you. That is just so good. When that didn't even happen in the first place. Just phenomenal stuff. I've actually done that before, I will say, where I went on a date on like an app, and I went into this place and I wasn't quite sure if this girl was the person I was dating or not. Sometimes, same with guys, I'm sure, but some girls don't always look exactly the same as they do online, which is part of the problem with online dating, to be fair. It works both ways. You can look better or worse. You just don't know how someone actually physically looks in real life. Not that that's really important, okay? But it can be. But yeah, I actually said to this girl, are you Emily? And she was like, no. And I said, great. What a great story. I just said you look like the person I'm supposed to be dating. Then they walked in and I just dated both of them. And then I went home and just that has to be censored because it didn't happen. And also, I wish it did. You talk about commentary. You know, Reddit commentary like this. It's just top tier, isn't it? 3 more stories to come. Let's get into the second. I set my cheating ex-boyfriend up with a bisexual girl and ruined his relationship. Over the summer of 2010, I was engaged to my ex. I was young and dumb, as we've all been, I guess. I lived in Europe but visited the States every summer. My mum is from here. So my ex cheated on me all summer and took the girl to my house, telling her it was his aunt's house. I got back and I found out everything. He begged me to forgive him and take him back. Not a chance, buddy. So, we had this girl in our circle that was bi. She'd always had a crush on me, but he definitely had a crush on her. I proposed my plan to this girl. After telling her what he'd done to me over the summer, I said that it would be amazing if she got him to fall in love with her, then dump him out of nowhere. But she had something so much better in mind. So, this is as things unfold. She would console him over our breakup and tell him that things would get better. They got close and started to date. 6 months in, he told her he loved her. Such a tool. So, she played along. I had a key to his place, so me and her went over before he got back from work. He came home to us making out in his bed. He completely freaked out and started shouting insane things that only make sense in the mind of a deranged cheater. He said that I deceived him and some stuff like that. I'm laughing my butt off because, dude, you cheated on me while we were engaged. And she just stood there and said, I was never into you, you cheating frick. I wish recording these scenarios was more popular at the time because his face was priceless. I mean, this man cried. Anyway, he stopped hanging around our circle altogether. He recently sent me a friend request on Facebook 15 years later. The audacity is ungodly. I mean, this is just so malicious, but it's so good. So good. A friend request 15 years later, by the way, is absolutely crazy. Like, what are you hoping for there? Absolutely ridiculous. What's so good about this story is that, like, this girl was willing to sacrifice so much of her life just to help OP out. This is an insane sacrifice. Like, I don't know what was going on sexually, but 6 months in, surely you've had sex at that point. You just must have done. And she doesn't even like this guy. I mean, I don't know. I suppose you could because, like, maybe he's an attractive guy, whatever. And maybe, yeah, you're just like, well, I'll do it for the plot. Crazy stuff. I was never into you, you cheating F. So good. My ex cheated, so I made him think he was being stalked on campus. To this day, he has no idea it was me. When I say I don't do screaming matches or begging after being disrespected, I mean it. My ex was emotionally and verbally abusive for most of our relationship. Manipulative, cruel, gaslighty, the works. We were long distance at the time because he'd gone away for college and I was living in another state. And then, surprise, surprise, I found out he was cheating. That was the last straw for me. But I wasn't going to go out with a dramatic breakup. I wanted him haunted. So I spent months quietly collecting receipts. I paid attention to everything. The names of the girls he followed, locations he popped up at on SnapMap. He'd turned off his actual location for me, but the idiot forgot Snapchat. Bars and hangout spots around campus, mutuals, everything. I memorized names, I saved info, I was building a case file like a dang detective. And then came the fun part. I made a fake Instagram account posing as a frat guy from his school. Then I text myself from the account, pretending to be some random dude saying, hey, I have proof your boyfriend's cheating on you. Of course, I was the one behind it all. The moment he saw it, he panicked, immediately told me to block the account and stop replying. He was going off. I acted confused and hurt the whole time. Oh, this is so good. Then I sent myself a long message from that fake account detailing everything. The name of the bar he always went to, the names of girls he followed, places I said I saw him at, stuff there's no way a stranger should have known. He genuinely thought he was being stalked and followed. He spiraled hard and ended up fully confessing to all the cheating and even went to campus police, convinced that someone was after him. Spoiler, nobody ever caught me. Nothing ever came of it. And now, he still tries to reach out to this day with long, dramatic apologies and regrets, and he still doesn't know that the random frat bro who exposed him was me the whole dang time. Again, unbelievable story. So clever and so good. So good. Like, imagine receiving those messages, you'd be like, what is happening? I have to be being stalked. There's no way people can know this about me. The paranoia that you'd have walking around campus from that point onwards, or just in your life in general, I suppose. Awful. Absolutely awful. And you got away with it. Genuinely the perfect revenge. Again, so well deserved. Now for our final story of revenge. Doing small acts of revenge to chip away at my boyfriend's sister's ego. Word of warning, guys. I do apologize. This one doesn't include a cheater. but they're terrible nonetheless. So, my boyfriend's sister is a very nasty female dog of a young woman. She treats her mum like trash, yells at her and belittles her. She's honestly mean with everyone in the house, even her own boyfriend. She yells at him every day. Once, she also yelled at me, telling me that the bed I bought isn't mine and that I don't own it. Like, I freaking bought it, so it's mine? She fiddled with the bed screws, then I firmly asked her to stop, and then she went crazy. I also don't like her because she started a fight with her mum the second her mum came home from work. It was my 20th birthday that day, by the way. She's also irresponsible, lazy, and negligent. She gets so drunk when we all go out that she ends up fainting and vomiting all night long. Then my boyfriend and I have to sacrifice our entire time out to watch over her butt. She also can't keep a boyfriend longer than 5 months. That's the backstory, basically. I've thought of many ways to silently get back at her. Then, I came across a video on TikTok where you can remove box dye with vitamin C tablets, baking soda, etc. So, I took almost 10 small vitamin C tablets and I crushed them up finally. After that, I poured it into her shampoo along with some vinegar and salt. She'd been dyeing her hair black for years. Now, every time when she'd wash her hair, the dye would come out. I personally think it'll be super funny. Hopefully, it will work. Any recommendations to get more revenge on her where I won't get caught or suspected of anything? Okay, there we go. Not a cheating story as much, but I suppose it involves a boyfriend's sister and she can't keep hold of a boyfriend because who knows, maybe she might be a cheat as well. Wouldn't put it past her reading all this stuff. Ridiculous. But yeah, great revenge, and hopefully she just never has black hair again and never realizes why. In terms of recommendations, what do you think? Comment down below, guys. Walk off. I spent about a year working as a DJ at one of the international vacation resorts. I worked at beach resorts in Mexico and the Bahamas, and I was at my last resort, a ski resort in Colorado. The manager for my team never arrived, as he was from Canada and got caught up in customs getting over the border. The head guy put this young kid in charge temporarily, and he was a total douche. It's around the holidays and the nightclub was hopping. There's a great deal of talent and the ladies kept coming in my booth to flirt and make requests. The kid is jealous and starts telling me to keep the girls out and focus on the music. He ends up telling me to lock the door and not let anyone in. Fine. He ends up coming back and knocks on the door as he wants to come in and scope out the women. I know what I'm doing and I'm sick of his BS. I tell him that I can't open the door as he told me to lock it and not let anyone in. I finally relent and let him in. He's screaming at me and I tell him that I was simply doing what he told me to do. The place is packed at this time and he tells me that I'm fired for not letting him in. I look at him and I ask if he's serious. He is beyond annoyed and tells me, yep, I'm out of here. I turn to the crowd, stop the song and tell the crowd that I'm sorry, but I've been fired. I close things up and walk out. At this point, I was ready to head home anyway, and the rules were that if you quit, you had to pay your way home. If you were fired, they had to fly you home. As it was the holidays, they couldn't get a flight for about a week, so I got to hang out at the resort and do nothing for a week. Wow, win-win. You know what? I completely agree with everything you did, and you're well within your right to do it. Now, I'm someone that quite likes club nights, sort of like events, late night music stuff. There is nothing worse than this happening. Thankfully, I've never been to an event where this has happened. But as a punter in the crowd, having a good time, I can't think of anything worse than a DJ just stopping in the middle of the night with no one else sort of replacing him, or, you know, even if you just like went on Spotify or something, it would just be so bad. It would be awful. So in terms of what you did, having a massive impact on the club, I mean, you know it, you're a DJ, but yeah, that is just like, it's one of the worst things that you could possibly do. So it's very, very good revenge, and yeah, good karma for this guy who don't really know what his sort of motive was throughout the entire thing here. I would be inclined to agree with you. He was probably just a bit jealous or just weird in general, but yeah, weird. Somebody asked in the comments, did he try to sort of take back the firing, or did he maintain that he was right? And then what did they do without a DJ? Exactly, it's a good question. OP said no, and I accepted it as I was ready to go home. They had other guys try and play music until they got another DJ, and overall it worked out great for me, so yeah, fair play to you. Neighbour said I was a bad neighbour. Help me make this true. I live with my driving age kids. Each of us has a car, plus my son has a hobby car he works on in his spare time. It's fully tagged and insured, just currently undrivable due to the back-ordered parts. I have no issue with the extra space it takes. He's a good kid with great friends and he stayed out of trouble. I'm definitely not perfect, but I feel like I always consider how my actions may affect others, especially my neighbours. I had terrible neighbours before moving here and wanted to have a little community on my next move, which I thought I found here. I share garden veggies and baked goods, take care of pets and watch homes when people are out of town, pull packages out of the rain, you name it. If I have it, I share it. If I can help, I do. I'm the neighbour people call when they need something, and I'm happy to oblige. Lately though, things have been tense. After a small fender bender, my son has been saving for repairs. At the same time, his hobby car is out of service. He's been welding something for the car and it's on a jack stand. His uncle lent him a car to use in the meantime, and we needed it anyway as we're relocating our business and it's a larger vehicle. It was that or renting a U-Haul and having that parked outside for 2 weeks. Then my car had issues and I had to rent one for a week while repairs were being completed. So we've had 2 more cars than usual. We live in a regular residential neighbourhood with no HOA where street parking is totally normal. The 2 extra cars were parked in the street. Temporary situation that was explained to the neighbours when they first asked why. Recently, one neighbour offered to pay to have my son's daily driver car towed, the one with minor visual damage. It's parked in our driveway, not the street. You can't tell that there's more damage underneath than what's visible. I get that she's a perfectionist. Her yard and house looks like a magazine cover. She gets annoyed by minor things, but we can't be like her. Can't afford it financially or emotionally. That bothered me, but I let it go. I've been trying to figure out a cost-effective solution. But then, another neighbour, Emily, pushed me over the edge. Weeks ago, she messaged me upset that someone parked across from her double driveway, asking me to tell my son not to park there. I looked and he wasn't parked anywhere near her house. I asked for clarification and got no response, so I chalked it up to her having a bad day. Today, I saw a car parked there and mentioned the text conversation to my son. He laughed and said she'd already ranted at him about someone else parking there. He tried to explain he doesn't park down there, but she wouldn't listen and didn't seem to care. The suspect car belongs to Tom, another neighbour, who was the one who'd parked there previously, during a business trip to avoid tree work happening next door to him. He'd even asked us all beforehand, in a group chat, if that spot was okay. In order to avoid more drama with Emily, I called Tom and told him what had transpired previously, and he moved it to our yard instead. He was flabbergasted, as they speak regularly and she mentioned nothing to him. Let me say this again, it's a public road, anyone can park there, and there's no way that car actually blocked Emily from using her driveway unless she's dealing with a serious driving impairment, which she's not. But she does have a reputation as a pot stirrer, and I think that may be one reason I made more of an effort to be nicer to her over the years, so that I don't become a target for her. But the more I thought about it, the more annoyed I got, so I messaged her directly and pointed out that she seemed upset with Tom, but was projecting that onto us. I told her I spoke to Tom and he moved his car up today so that it isn't in front of her driveway. She replied saying my son did park near her house once, but across the street and next to her driveway. She claimed a telephone pole makes it hard to maneuver their truck. She began ranting about Tom again. I told her maybe we could request the pole be moved and that I'd helped a client do this recently. That is when she lost it. This is all in writing, by the way, so there's no denying it. Suddenly, it wasn't about blocked driveways or poles. It was about how we have too many cars and that makes us bad, inconsiderate neighbours. She said some pretty nasty things and I ended up blocking her. I had no idea that each driver having their own car could be an issue. Her reaction was completely uncalled for. She's the one I've helped the most over the years and I've never once asked her for a thing. But now, I'm honestly fed up. Lately I've felt low and this just confirms it. I've let myself be taken advantage of, treated like a doormat, all while trying to be the good neighbour. Recently, the neighbour that was her usual target moved away. I am now positive that I'm her replacement. I'm also sad that I'm allowing 2 people to change how I am. It really made me happy to be the go-to neighbour, but now I feel defeated. So help me find joy again, Reddit. Plastic yard flamingos are officially on order. What else can I do to be petty, annoying, and inconsiderate? Fantastic. All right, guys, that is where you come in. Now, I will say there is an update to this one, so this might just be temporary, but that is where you come in nonetheless. What is the most annoying thing that you can think of to annoy one of your neighbors? Just make their life considerably worse, knowing as well who this woman is, like an absolute perfectionist, just someone who obviously has so much pride in their house, too much pride probably, and yeah, that spills over onto the rest of the street, etc. It actually reminds me of my grandparents' street in America, in Virginia, where they do have an HOA, and I think it's pretty strict, but they kind of like it because it sort of keeps everyone in order. All the houses look very similar. You know, you've got to take care of your house, which is a good thing. So I do think sometimes an HOA can be a good thing, but obviously that isn't the case here. And even still, I mean, I'm not sure that many HOAs in the US say that you have a limit on how many cars you're allowed to have. Maybe they do, actually. I'm not sure. But this doesn't seem too outrageous depending on where it is in the world. If that was the case here, yeah, that would be a problem. I mean, you can barely have more than a car per family where I live, to be honest. I mean, 2 is sort of pushing it. But nonetheless, I want to see this woman burn just because she's just so like up herself, isn't she? If they were really legitimate sort of requests, then it would be fine, but they're not. And also, she's forgetting how much Tom has helped her over the years, and I feel bad for Tom. So let's help him get some revenge. What would you do? I think plastic flamingos is a great idea. Just make your house potentially as garish and horrible as possible. There's nothing she can do, right? It's public street, and your house is private. So, you know, there's no HOA, nothing she can do. What would you suggest? I mean, I'm thinking sort of like put up Christmas lights immediately now. Bearing in mind that this was posted just 8 days ago. So yeah, Christmas lights in summer and just keep them up. Take the hit on the electricity. That'll be elite. But yeah, as I said, there is an update to this story already posted a couple of days later. Let's see what happened next. Not the update you guys want, but more drama and some karma. I was working from home when I saw a person taking photos of our cars. I immediately knew it was code enforcement. I went out to speak to him and he said he received a call about our cars. Shocker, right? He slipped up and mentioned the borrowed car. I immediately knew it was her. She's the only one who knew we borrowed it and that we didn't own it. Not that it couldn't be anyone else, but he showed up first thing the day after her latest rant. He kept referring to our cars as abandoned, including the one parked in the street. I found this confusing and told him that all of these but one are daily drivers. The one that isn't will be once repaired. I later read the online complaint where she said we have multiple cars abandoned on our property and on the street for over 2 years. This is completely false and is a blatant lie. Apparently, the borrowed car sticker was expired and he said he'd have to come back and check on it. After he left, my son put the sticker on the tag. It was in the glove box. Go figure. I later called the inspector back to let him know about the sticker and to ask what other steps we needed to take, if any. He said he was going to come back in 7 days and that we cannot leave the car parked in the same area. We have to make sure it's moved every day since it's registered to a different address, and he'll take photos. I told him that won't be a problem. My son drives it every day. He's also among the pettiest people I've come to know. You'll never guess where it's parked. In another twist of fate, I found a website that shows all the open violations of a specified address. That's where I found a snippet of the complaint she made. I decided to look up her address too. The same day the inspector stopped at my house, there were 2 complaints opened for her address. The complaint on ours was made the day before. I saw him walk over there when he left from my house, and he was over there for quite a while. I guess he was giving her an update. I also guess while he was there, he saw her overgrown, trash-filled backyard. That's what one complaint was labelled. I'm not sure what the second complaint is for, but she's had multiple renovation and construction projects that she's bragged to everyone and their mother about. When I looked up the zoning violation, it didn't show details or comments, and when I searched further, her address has no recent permits. Like, in the past 7 years, not one. What does it mean to live in a glass house? Yeah, well, clearly this woman is just nuts. I don't know how many times I've said it now over the years, but for someone that knows, and this woman must know, that she is not fully abiding by the law, why is she getting involved in someone else's business who is obviously going to seek some sort of revenge, or at the very least is going to be like, okay, you're doing this to me, I'm going to at least check that you're doing everything right as well. Like, if you know that you're not doing everything 100% right, then why would you make someone else, or even give someone like a tiny incentive to check on your life? It's just so dumb. But I guess this woman is dumb, like just lying and getting people involved in things that she didn't need to get them involved in. Karma. It's deserved. There you go. What can I say? 13 years of revenge in the making. For this story, the cast will be me, my brother, Mark, my half-brother, Sam, my half-sister, Alicia, and my mum. All fake names for obvious reasons. So let's get into the backstory. My mum is the highest level of a failed parent. When I was 2, my baby brother Mark was born. As a typical 2-year-old, I didn't like that, and I proceeded to act out in regards to it. As time went on though, I learned from my grandfather and grandmother that treating someone like that wasn't a good idea, and then turned my act around to love and care for him and help out where I could. However, this didn't change much. My mother basically threw me away to be raised by my grandparents because I was, quote, a demonic hellspawn of a child. In her mind, her new child was latest and greatest, and I was just old news. Let's time skip. My mother has now had her 4 kids. Mark and I with my dad, and Sam and Alicia with my stepfather. I'm about 13, Mark's 11, Alicia is about 1.5, and Sam was just born. Mum and dad are divorced, mum married my stepdad, and I'm at the rebellious age now where things don't make sense to me, and I feel like I know everything. So my stepdad's idea is to beat it out of me. Every time I showed any sense of individuality or questioning something, I got beat for it. Sometimes right in front of my mother, and she didn't care a bit. This is where the trigger for me wanting my revenge started, but being 13 and sadly a little on the mentally damaged side from all the beatings, and having a bookcase full of books land on me at around 11, I had no concept of what sort of revenge would come from my mind at the time. So I decided that waiting would be best. Mum's mistake number 1 has been made. On top of that, my mother and stepdad refused to do any housework. Instead, waiting for the weekend when grandma and grandpa would leave to visit grandma's mother, and they'd put us to work cleaning the house and doing stuff that adults should be doing. Now look, I get the concept of chores. Chores are fine. The problem is when you make your child climb ladders and get on the roof at the age of 11 to clean out gutters, or climb trees to snip branches and such that it gets a bit too dangerous. Wow. This happened since I was about 10. Yeah, I know things are a little out of order, I'll keep on track. Anyway, time skip to when I'm 14 now. My mother told me and Mark to watch Alicia. She was 2 by this time. My stepdad wanted to play video games, and when we weren't being bad in his eyes, he'd let us watch, but we were never allowed to play without him there watching us. I pop up while I'm sitting there and ask, "Where is Alicia?" Full-blown panic mode, go. Mark and I just got up and go scouring through the house. Stepdad goes to check my mum's room, where she's sleeping with Sam, who she was up with all night. My dad was in the kitchen, making himself something to eat while he was visiting. Then he freaked out and burned his hand on the stovetop when everyone else started freaking out. Then he started searching. Mark and I ran out back and looked around, saw nothing. We didn't even think to check the pool, so we ran back inside and rummaged through the garage. Next thing, we hear my mother screaming at the top of her lungs, and we rush outside to find Alicia on the deck, not breathing, and my mother and stepdad are trying to perform CPR on her. Oh my gosh. My father drags Mark and I away to go inside, and the ambulance is called. Needless to say, Alicia did not survive, and they pulled the plug on her that night. Oh my goodness. Mum's mistake number 2 has been made. Wow. I'm so sorry to hear that. Mark and I were devastated. Being the teenager I was and the preteen he was, we immediately blamed ourselves, and our grandparents assured us that it wasn't our fault or responsibility, and that we need to know this isn't on us. A week later, Child Protective Services got word and came, and my father, in his infinite wisdom, initiated a custody battle with my mother after this, claiming that she wasn't capable of caring for her children, and he won, but only temporarily. Needless to say, our grandparents believed we belonged with our mother, and they fought back. My mum ultimately did win us back. Time skip again. I'm 18 now. I'm an adult. I'm looking to graduate high school and make my mark on the world and get my life going. Mark was 15 now. He'd gotten into a fight and broke his finger. It had to be repaired with pins and screws, and he was on some pretty hefty pain medicine. I don't remember the name. It was my mother's job to watch him and regulate his pain medicine so that nothing bad would happen. Sadly though, that bad thing did happen. My grandfather picked me up from school one day, and I could see he had a gloomy look on his face. We showed up to the house, and as we were walking up, I could see the paramedics rolling a stretcher with a body bag on it. Mark had died from a drug overdose at the age of 15 because my mother wasn't watching him like she should have been. That was the final straw. What is going on here? At that moment, my family was divided. My dad's side and my mother's side. My mother had my grandparents, who I was living with at the time, and my father had me and his family. I sided with my father completely, his argument being that had she been a better mother, Mark would still be alive, and what's worse, Sam had been taken away by CPS and put in foster care. My mother was never allowed to raise children again, and I never saw my half-brother ever again. I was now an only child. My mother had destroyed the life I knew with her neglect, so I was going to ruin the rest of her life any way I could. Revenge time. This woman caused the death of 2 of my siblings, and I never got to see my living half-sibling again. She abused me mentally, emotionally, physically, took away my childhood, and every time I look at her, I can't help but seethe with unmitigated rage. The first revenge. My grandfather had basically been my best friend. He took me in, cared for me, taught me all sorts of different skills. He had one flaw though. He was too kind for his own good, something my mother maliciously preyed on after the deaths in the family. My grandmother gave up hope and just diverted to his opinion on everything. So, I made it a point that every time she tried, I challenged her on it in front of them. I made sure she had to fight for what she wanted. I always lost, but I could see my constant meddling would get to her, irritate her. I wanted her to do something. I wanted her to hit me, harm me, give me a single reason. She never went that far, but she did break down crying multiple times. Then, I got lucky. She slipped at work, herniated a few of her discs, and messed her back up really badly. When I got the news, I grinned. Around this time, my stepdad had been imprisoned for doctor shopping. What is doctor shopping? Oh wow, apparently it's the practice of visiting multiple healthcare providers to obtain multiple prescriptions for the same drug, often to feed an addiction. Wow, or maybe even sell it on. That's crazy. And so for that reason, my mother wanted a divorce from him. When she came home from the hospital, I would take her meds and hide them around the house, and sometimes even throw them away. I wanted her to be in agony. I wanted her to suffer as much as possible, and she did. A few months later, she got into a car wreck, and the police found out she was on a hefty amount of her pain meds. She was charged with a DUI and put in jail for 6 months. I grinned and laughed once I got that news, and proceeded to plan my next stage. She was in pain and behind bars. This was perfect. The second revenge. Time skip again. After she got out of jail, we'll skip ahead a few years. She's now living with us. I am officially in college. I did the stupid thing and took a year off between high school graduation and applying to a college, so my grandparents made me a deal. As long as I worked and I was in school, I could stay with them free of charge. Who wouldn't take that deal? While my mother was in jail, I made it a point to shove all of her property into a storage, and I made her room my room. And I turned my old living space into my gaming room. She had no choice but to sleep on the couch. I enjoyed every moment of her agonizing when she would get up from laying on that couch. Agonizing because the metal bars on it would press into her back as she slept. This was my revenge for some time. Slow and painful. The third revenge. Time skip. We moved back to the old house we were all living in, and my mother has made her back worse through a series of mistakes and bad decisions. She'd somehow convinced my grandparents to start illegally procuring drugs for her. She'd make the connection with the dealer and they would shell out money to her for them. I argued with my grandparents to stop. It was illegal and it will land them all in jail if they get caught. My grandfather agreed, but my grandmother couldn't help but take care of her little girl and guilted my grandfather into it. I refused to be a part of it. I put in an anonymous tip into local law enforcement, but sadly nothing came of it. My revenge had failed this time, but I didn't know I would get the ultimate screw you in, because it came in the form of my most malicious, vindictive statement ever spoken. Plus, I was still messing with her, hiding her medications. It's childish, but sometimes you have to be a bit childish to get the point across. So, now for the final revenge. I am 31 now. It's been 13 agonizing years since my brother Mark died, and I have finally completed my revenge on my mother. My grandfather just passed last year, and I've been saving a veritable buttload of cash from over the years in jobs I worked, inheritance from other deaths in the family, and so on. I went to visit my grandmother, who's not been in great shape since my grandfather passed, and her dog passed about 6 months after that. My mother comes out to me while we're sitting there talking and asks if I would take care of her after grandma was gone, that it was my duty as her son. She was broke, my grandmother was going into a retirement home, and my mother blew through her inheritance with her dealings. The rest was going to me. I knew it for a fact. I stood up, and while I stared my mother directly in the eyes, I managed the most hateful, vicious stare I could muster. It wasn't hard, and I told her, "You get nothing from me. Grandma's going into a retirement home, I'm moving states. You destroyed my life, took away my childhood, were responsible for the deaths of my siblings, broke the law numerous times, and you made everyone's lives a living hell. You will be on the street and die alone, and I will laugh. I never loved you, and I never will. You will never see your grandchildren, if and when there are any. You will not be at my wedding. You will never be mother to me again. Rot in hell." My grandmother's jaw hit the floor and my mother burst into tears. I had finally broken her and I'd got my revenge. It may not seem like much to you all, but that moment was heavenly for me. It felt amazing to finally know I've gotten my ultimate revenge after all of these years, and I've danged her to suffering. My grandmother is going into that retirement home in about 3 months, and I'm helping her move her stuff. So there will be no chance of her little girl weaseling her way out of her fate. After that, I am moving to a new state and starting my new life with a new job and wonderful girlfriend who I love more than anything. For those of you who have brothers and sisters, love them, cherish them, and be with them, because you never know what's going to happen. This revenge was born of me losing my siblings, the one thing I loved most in the world. Being an older brother was the happiest time in my life, and after they died and Sam was taken by CPS, I've had to suffer as an only child and still cry myself to sleep at night over it. It was traumatizing, so please, cherish your siblings. Thank you for reading. Wow, how do I even begin to react to such a crazy story like that? I mean, crazy is not the word, just tragically sad. Yeah, insane. Like, I can talk about the revenge itself and the fact that it's good, but it's not even about that, I don't think. It's about the trauma that you've had to deal with, OP. Losing 2 of your siblings and like the way you've lost them as well, just due to your parents' neglect or your family's neglect. It's just insane. It's just ridiculous. These people should be in prison. Like, why are they not in prison for, I don't know, child abuse? They have to be. How has your mum gotten away with that? For example, with your brother Mark. Maybe there's a case that for your half sister, that's an accident and no one goes to prison for that. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, to be honest. Like, if you've got a pool and the doors aren't locked and you've got a toddler running around and you're just locked into video games, I'm sorry. That is as good as murder, in my opinion. That's like, the neglect there is ridiculous, especially if you're asking your other kids to look after a 2-year-old. But yeah, I mean, just insane. How do you even begin to work out what's gone on there? As for you, OP, I don't know. Like, I feel so bad because clearly this is still affecting you so much, and it will for the rest of your life. Like, the fact that you've said you still cry yourself to sleep at night is so sad. But I'd be in the same position. What else can I say to that? Just tragic. I hope that you're continuing, and it does sound like it might continue even further, revenge brings you some solace. I don't know if it necessarily does, to be honest, based on me trying to understand your tone and cut through your words. Let me know in the comments. Do you reckon this is doing anything for OP, or he should just try and forget about the whole thing? I mean, it's impossible. It's impossible. But yeah, any advice for OP going forward? Leave it in the comments down below. I feel like this one is just, he's just waiting for his mum to die, and only then will he truly be happy, which is so sad, but so fair. Oh, horrific story. Let me know in the comments down below what you thought of everything. I used theatrics to spite my bully. He was pretty dramatic about the whole thing. Prelude. When I was a young man of just 18, I got a job in the Canadian oil patch. It was my first real job. It was the early 2000s, and this paid $20 an hour with no experience or education required. The minimum wage was sub $6 back then. It was called well testing. Basically, you hook up a closed pressure tank and flare stack to new oil and gas wells, then flow them and gather data for the oil barons. It's hard work setting up and tearing down, but the rest is recording gauges and computer work. Not bad for a first job. Except for fricking Gary. You work 2-man 12-hour or 4-man 24-hour crews. 1 labourer and 1 supervisor a shift. I was paired with a mean-spirited alcoholic in his mid-50s named Gary. He was overweight and lazy, only helping with things too heavy to lift on my own, like 250-pound pipes. He spent his days in the trailer for the most part anyway, watching DVDs, napping, and hourly typing a bit of data into a PC. He also liked picking on me with jokes, read insults. I'm not a small man, about 6'1" in heels. He was noticeably smaller, yet while not physically intimidated, back then I lacked confidence and had a baby face. I got called stupid a lot. When he found out I've never used a power drill, he asked me, "Didn't your dad teach you anything?" I made the error of telling him my dad was only in my life for a handful of years. The next time I made a mistake, he quipped, "No wonder my dad walked out on me." I did call him out on that. Like every other jerk alive, he'd tell me though that I couldn't take a joke. We always worked far out of town in the country. I often had to eat dinner with him in small town restaurants, mostly bars if we could help it. He drank a lot. He could actually be personable when not at work, and he was at least 2 deep. He didn't stop, and he drank every night. It quickly became the case that I drove us to work in his truck. He made $1 or $1.10 per kilometer, and we could drive 100 to 350 kilometers per day, every day, for weeks. 100 miles is 160 kilometers, FYI. I got minimum wage for travel time. He was hungover most mornings, didn't want to drive, and told me that he was boss. He slept like a gin-bloated corpse until we got to work. I worked with him for 3 months. 3 months of demeaning treatment and verbal abuse. I don't react much, but it's still true that everyone has their breaking point. I was very used to bullying by then, long story. So I just got silent. I think that might be my worst fear ever, by the way, just to interject. Doing a job with someone who is outright bullying you, and then even when the job is finished, because you're working on site with them or whatever, or you're staying at a place overnight, or for a long period of time you're not at home, you have to then do things sort of socially with them, like having meals with them, going out with them. I mean, that is just awful. The work alone is bad enough, but then after that, having to be with them, terrible. Part 1. The power of love. The first step in my quest for vengeance was remembering that it's impossible to defeat evil with the power of love. Okay, that's it. That's the end of part 1. Part 2, the power of terror. Yeah, that's a lot more like it. One night, while we were out of town on a job, during dinner, I mentioned to Gary, it's pretty lame that he sleeps most of the time while I drive his truck and he gets paid. Maybe he ought to kick a few bucks my way for the effort. He didn't like my suggestion that he be generous. The last hinge must have crumbled because he came unglued. More verbal abuse. And I was young, it actually reduced me to angry tears. When he threatened my job, it was a bad feeling. So I resolved to at least get away from him. I'd been taking notes because I wanted a different crew anyway. My breaking point was achieved. This is usually when my instinct for self-preservation diminishes and impulsive thoughts have fewer safeguards. I wanted to go home. Not revenge, but serendipity delivered the next morning. Gary was once again in his travel coma and I drove us to work. About 30 kilometers from side of the highway, on a pullout, was a semi-truck. Luck would also have it, it was running, and the trucker was outside his rig. I quickly formulated a plan. Gary always needed to be woken with intent, so he didn't stir when I stopped, got out, and asked the friendly driver for a favour. The trucker man agreed to my terms, got back in his semi to await the signal. Gary, blissfully sleeping off the last of his nightly whiskey, also failed to notice when I manoeuvred his truck. Parking it, we were nearly bumper to bumper facing the big, beautiful Peterbilt. I lit the beacon. The truckers of Rohan answered with their own headlights. Like the horn of Helm Hammerhand sounding in the deep, the trucker hit his air horn with amazing commitment to instilling fear. I did my part by honking Gary's truck gleefully in respite and screaming my butt off. I cried bloody murder at blast level and yelled, "F, we're gonna die!" Striking like a battalion of bombers singing a chorus of fire. The glorious cacophony lasted less than a minute. What a sentence. When it hit him, Gary dented the ceiling. Good thing he's thick as cement, or that might have hurt. He rocketed up with such force because the amount of poop he rapidly expelled into his pants kept him in debt to his own bowels until retirement. The wonderful sound of his anguished howls segued quickly into apoplexy and rage. While coming to terms with what I had done, he couldn't correctly choke out his death threats. I reversed, peeled off before he decided to get out to make good, and gave the trucker a wave. I got about 10 meters down the road when Gary felt the need to tell me he had dangerously high blood pressure and I could have killed him with a stroke. About 4 years later, I went to paramedic school. So yeah, in hindsight, I agree with his assessment. Sucks for him that at 18 I legitimately had no idea what a stroke was. What would I even do? Probably ignore him like they did with Stalin. I think he was just extra hungover or being lazier than usual by pretending half his body was paralyzed. Dead. I started laughing and told him he should probably calm down then. I said, "Can't you take a joke?" He kept making incomplete threats and I just couldn't stop laughing, making it even funnier when he wouldn't shut up. Don't feed it, Gary. I love ugly laughing at angry people. I was a hyena. He was fighting the urge to kill me and the desire to not stroke out simultaneously. The struggle was real. It took about 20 minutes more to get to site. That dance continued the whole time. I even asked him if that was his normal shade of red. Arriving, he ordered me to get out, said I was fired, then stomped off to go and call the company owner. Whatever. I had intermittent chuckles and smoked cigarettes while savouring my Pyrrhic victory for the 4 hours it took the company owner to come and pick me up. It was a medium-sized business, about 100 employees. He was the GM as well. I got some details. Gary wanted to involve the cops for attempted murder. Boss, though, dissuaded him. Gary told one heck of a tale that left me looking like Satan, so I told him all about the necessity of Gary's punishment on the way back to the city. He had a good chuckle about it. He was actually a decent guy. I worked for him until I went back to school. I got moved to a different crew where I could be the lone sociopath. And that's about it. I did though get some street cred with the rest of the boys at the company. What a great start to the episode. It's a classic prank, isn't it? You've probably seen it a million times on social media, on YouTube, waking somebody up when they think they're about to get smashed by a car or involved in some sort of traffic accident. Normally it's when you're behind like I don't know what you even call it, a car moving vehicle. Let me know in the comments what that's actually called, but where cars are actually facing the other way on a moving van or lorry or whatever it is. So it looks like they're coming towards you when actually they're not. But this is like another level. This is somebody else actually getting involved with this and putting the prank. It's brilliant. Just so good. Also, as I said during that, I cannot imagine working with somebody like this day in, day out and then having to spend your evenings with them. Awful. Well done for doing this and then getting moved to a different crew. The HOA president's long goodbye. When I moved into my suburban neighborhood, I expected peace and quiet. Instead, I walked into a petty dictatorship run by our HOA president, Todd. Todd was the worst kind of leader, the kind who loved power but hated accountability. He enforced ridiculous rules, like fining people $200 for leaving their trash cans out a minute past 9 AM, but he then blatantly ignored the rules when it suited him. His own yard was a mess of unpermitted structures, and his fence was taller than allowed by city ordinances. But Todd's true sin? Using the HOA as his personal piggy bank. At first, I tried reasoning with him. My fence was slightly off colour because the approved stain wasn't available, and he fined me $500. I explained, provided receipts, and asked for leniency, but Todd smirked and said, "Rules are rules," and walked away. That's when I decided I would take him down, not with screaming or public arguments, but methodically, legally, and in a way he'd never recover from. Step 1. Become the inside man. Todd's first mistake was underestimating me. I volunteered for the HOA board under the guise of wanting to get involved in the community. I played the part of the eager, naive newbie perfectly. For 2 years, I attended every meeting, quietly observing how Todd operated. I learned that he controlled the board by bullying other members and burying them in paperwork. He'd push through votes when only his allies were present and conveniently lose paperwork submitted by dissenting homeowners. I kept my head down, took detailed notes, and I waited. My goal was to outlast his term as president so I could begin making changes. Then I discovered Todd's second mistake. He wasn't just a bully, he was a thief. Step 2. Follow the money. Todd loved to brag about how he kept the HOA's finances in order, but something didn't add up. The annual HOA fees were high, much higher than in similar neighborhoods, but the common areas were falling apart. The pool was closed half the summer due to maintenance issues, and the landscaping looked like it hadn't been touched in months. I started digging. As the HOA treasurer, Todd had access to all the accounts, but he was notoriously cagey about sharing financial details. I asked for the budget during a meeting, and Todd laughed it off, saying, "Don't worry, I've got it under control." I filed a formal request for the financial records, which, under HOA rules, he was required to provide. Weeks went by with no response, and that is when I started talking to neighbours. It turns out I wasn't the only one who was suspicious. Over a dozen homeowners had requested access to the budget over the years, only to be ignored. One neighbour claimed that Todd had used HOA funds to install a new patio at his house, while another swore that he'd seen Todd's kids at the community pool during its maintenance closure. Armed with these suspicions, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, forcing Todd to provide the records. He stalled, but I wasn't backing down. Step 3. Build the case. When Todd finally handed over the financial documents, they were a mess. Invoices were missing, payments were mislabeled, and some expenses were downright bizarre. A $15,000 landscaping fee paid to a company that didn't exist. Thousands spent on administrative costs with no explanation. I cross-referenced the HOA's bank statements with public records, and I found the smoking gun. Todd was funneling money to his personal accounts. Even better, I discovered that Todd had been inflating contractor fees, pocketing the difference, and splitting the profits with his buddy, a shady contractor who handled most of the HOA's maintenance. I compiled everything into a detailed report, complete with spreadsheets, photos, and notarized statements from neighbors who had seen Todd's antics firsthand. Step 4. The coup. I waited for the annual HOA meeting, which was typically a snooze fest attended by only a handful of homeowners. But this time, I made sure people showed up. I spent weeks knocking on doors, explaining what Todd had been up to. I didn't share everything, just enough to get people angry and curious. On the night of the meeting, the room was packed. Todd started the meeting like usual, droning on about how difficult it was to manage the HOA and how much he'd sacrificed for the community. That's when I stood up. I calmly asked if he could explain some discrepancies in the budget. Todd laughed nervously and said, "I don't think this is the time or place." I replied, "Actually, Todd, it's the perfect time." I handed out copies of my report to everyone in the room, and the mood shifted instantly. People started reading, whispering, and then shouting. Todd tried to regain control, but it was too late. I called for a vote to remove him as president, and by the end of the night, Todd was out. Step 5. The final blow. After Todd was removed, we hired an independent auditor to go through the HOA's finances. They confirmed everything. Todd had embezzled over $50,000, mismanaged tens of thousands more, and committed multiple counts of fraud. We reported him to the police and filed a civil lawsuit to recover the stolen funds. But it didn't end there. Todd's shady contractor buddy was also exposed and banned from doing business in the county. Todd had to sell his house to pay restitution and legal fees. His name became a running joke in the neighborhood, and nobody would touch him professionally. With Todd gone, we restructured the HOA to prevent another dictator from taking over. We implemented term limits, required multiple board members to approve financial decisions, and created an online portal so that all homeowners could access budgets and meeting minutes. The aftermath. Every time I walk past Todd's old house, now owned by a lovely family, I smile. The pool is open, the landscaping is beautiful, and the HOA fees are lower than ever. Todd, meanwhile, moved to a neighbouring town where he reportedly tried to join another HOA board, only to be laughed out of the room when someone Googled his name. Justice wasn't just served, it was plated, garnished, and savoured. Okay guys, there we go. That is it for the first story. First of all, I just gotta say, just a brilliant story. It was genuinely just so good. I loved every second of that, the way it was written, the aftermath, great. One thing I will say though, and you're gonna have to help me out in the comments down below, those of you that are from America, or I presume this is in America, or just where homeowners associations are more prevalent. Help me out in the comments down below. Just how do they work? Because I would have thought that Todd would go to prison for something like this, because surely this is illegal, right? Or at least would be charged. But the fact that he was seemingly free to then move to another community and try to get on, or try to become president of a new HOA, or at least, go on the board. How is that allowed? It doesn't make any sense. But yeah, stealing that much money, stealing $50,000 and mismanaging tens of thousands more and then not going to prison, that's a massive injustice. Secondly, something else that I want to hear your thoughts on is this. Are you part of an HOA yourself? If you are, please get in the comments down below and let me know how it is. I say this because over the Christmas period, I was in America visiting my grandparents who live in Virginia. And they are part of an HOA and they love it. They say it's great. Obviously you have to pay for it and it's all private, and, if something happens or something needs repairing, or, people want to improve the road, then you got to do that. You got to pay for that yourself. But they say that it really helps keep, all the houses in really good nick. And to be fair, it's a very nice place where they live. Like, you go in and it's super nice. Whereas, around me, sometimes you have a road with potholes and it won't be fixed for seemingly years, because it's up to the council to do it rather than the actual people that live in the neighborhood doing it themselves. But yeah, they say it's great. But then I read stories like this and I'm like, well, really, is it great? I suppose it does depend on who is in charge and who your neighbors are and how it's run. If their HOA, my grandparents, that is, the president was embezzling or trying to take lots of money out of it, I'm sure they wouldn't say the same things. But yeah, what I want to know is, for those of you that are in HOAs, comment down below. What is it like? Is it more like my grandparents' one, or is it more like the stories I read on Reddit, stuff like what I've just read there? Or does it just massively depend on who is running your HOA and the neighborhood you live in, etc., and the people involved? Yeah, want to hear your thoughts. But without further ado, let's jump into our second revenge story of this one, and this one comes from r/NuclearRevenge. So it's going to be nuclear. Ex-wife steals business. A revenge 2 years in the making. This story involves some legal details, but I'm neither a lawyer nor did I follow those aspects super closely, so sorry for any inaccurate or vague terminology. Buckle up, this will be a long one. Participants. Abe is a young, talented veterinarian. Sophia is his now ex-wife from a very rich family. Yours truly is a humble software developer turned cybersecurity specialist 6 months ago. So let's get into the backstory. Abe and Sophia both worked with my parents, who owned a veterinarian clinic. Abe as a veterinarian, Sophia as an assistant. Abe is a bit of a pushover, but a nice guy. Sophia is very manipulative, borderline evil. Around 4 years ago, Sophia was caught stealing from the cash register and was fired. She pushed Abe till he also quit around half a year later. They founded their own veterinary clinic 2 towns over, though much smaller, with Abe being the only doctor. While we all really hated Sophia, and my parents really were mad at Abe for defending her, I still liked Abe, and I wished him the best. I helped him set up a website and some other IT stuff that will come into play later. Okay, so let's get into the story then. So, 2 years after Sophia and Abe started up their own veterinary clinic, it was going well. Legally, Sophia and her family owned 49% of the company. Abe owned 46% and another investor owned 5%. This other investor was supposedly neutral, but turned out to be friends with Sophia's family. Sophia and the investor decided to basically screw Abe out of the business. I don't exactly know why, but having known Sophia for years, I'm assuming Beelzebub warned her she is running low on her quota of ruining lives. Basically, they founded a new veterinary company and started selling the assets of the old company to it for basically no money. Now, of course, since they had over 50% of shares between Sophia and the other investor, they could do this. With this type of organization in my country, 51% control means you have the final say. They couldn't technically just fire Abe, but since they ran the original company into the ground, he was still out. He was the only doctor and did most of the work, and it turned out they had a non-compete clause that meant he couldn't start up a new business. And while he wasn't on the worst possible terms with my parents, the only other clinic in the area that wasn't just a single doctor and could hire him, it was enough of a bridge burned that he basically had no choice of working as a vet in this whole region. So, Abe was left with no job, and all the money he invested into his company was effectively stolen. Oh, and they also tried to screw me out of payment for making them some functionality for the clinic's website that let people reserve time slots and receive veterinarians' notes online, and also for setting up their company emails. So then, the actual revenge. So, Abe was out of luck, and I was out having a drink with him to cheer him up, when the topic turned to who the new veterinarian would be to do the actual work. I'm not insinuating that vet assistants don't do actual work. Sophie specifically doesn't. She is actually afraid of dogs and won't hold them. Abe did all the management stuff on the website and ordering medical stuff, even the cleaning. We had no clue, but I was a tad peed, both up and off. So I decided to check if they removed my access to all the IT stuff when we yelled at each other over payment. They didn't. And they didn't change the company email address's password either. We decided to snoop, which was technically barely not illegal, since Abe was part of the company for like 2 more weeks at the time. And this was an overall company email, not Sophie's. We found 3 applicants, all of whom we immediately and very, very rudely rejected. Veterinary medicine is a small world in this country, so good luck with finding another doctor. The actual nuclear part, however, came 2 years later, when Abe was already in the middle of a very long court battle. Since, as you can imagine, what Sophie and the investor did is not exactly 100% legal. I was cleaning up some stuff on my work laptop when I noticed they still didn't manage to remove my access to their system years later. See, we knew the clinic, the new company, was still going on, but they had a hard time finding veterinarians. I can't imagine why. And the ones they could left quickly. As I poked around in their system, I saw that the veterinarian on the different case logs for weeks at a time was written as Sophie in the internal database. See, as it later came out, she was pretending she was an actual vet when there wasn't a real one employed for weeks, and she even forged prescriptions. Now the thing is, me accessing this info is legally dubious at best. Sharing it with Abe would be even worse. In the last couple of years, however, I was studying cybersecurity to become an ethical hacker. And would you know it, idiot never learned any cybersecurity me 2 years ago, accidentally left in a vulnerability that a smart attacker could use to read data from the internal database. In layman's terms, you could inject input that would cause the database to send a request to any old server out there containing this confidential data, such as a server an attacker owns. Just a couple of days later, the leaked database showing Sophie's fraud ended up posted anonymously to a forum I happened to read. For legal reasons, it definitely wasn't me who posted it. I just happened to find it right after it was posted from a fresh account, and I archived it in the 15-minute window before the mods deleted it. I did send an email to Sophia when I first saw the issue in the code. I was worried that me accessing the system would show up in the logs and would be suspicious, saying that I found a security flaw while going through my old code, and to contact me about fixing it. I must have forgotten that she mainly uses the clinic's main address instead of the one that is like sophie@clinicsname.com, which she checks like once a month at best. How forgetful of me. When Abe's lawyer got the judge to order a full audit of these logs and the prescriptions, Sophie tried to delete the full database, failing to remember the backup it makes every week. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but I feel confident giving the advice that trying to delete evidence a judge ordered you to provide does not play well with courts. It strongly looks like she'll end up serving time. As a cherry on top, I helped Abe patch things up with my parents, and he got his old job back. He's been back for a year and just got a promotion and a raise. I'm currently sipping on some rum as I'm typing this that he bought me as a thanks from his first bigger salary. Oh, and one final edit as well. I forgot to originally mention it, but I was reminded while I was replying to a comment. Don't worry, all the animals that Sophia treated are being followed up on by government officials. Abe had access to the logs because of the court case and looked over it as well, though he couldn't follow up with everyone personally. So far, and this is the good news, it looks like she at least didn't harm any animals. She mainly just gave mandatory vaccinations, removed stitches, did drops and sprays against ticks and fleas, that sort of stuff. All perfectly within a practiced veterinary assistant skill set, but still highly illegal, of course. Okay, there we go. That is it for this revenge story. And immediately I want to jump into the comments. Somebody has said, I hope Sophie ends up in jail for a long time. And that makes me think, yeah, like through all of this, I actually have no idea if what she's done, well, I mean, it has to be illegal. Like a lot of the stuff surely has to be illegal. Firstly, there's blatant fraud. But secondly, like the actual like what she did with the company herself, just taking all the money out of it, forcing Abe to leave his job, etc. I get that you have the control of the business, but surely there are laws that mean, okay, I've got 51% control of a business, now I can just completely destroy it and sack all the staff and just, you know, cause them massive trouble, etc, etc. I don't know. Anyway, OP replied to that comment about hoping that Sophie gets jail time, saying, last I heard, the company stuff that they did to Abe is illegal, but it would probably end in just a fine and maybe the non-compete being invalid. But then they move on to talking about obviously the vet stuff, which is, yeah, potentially very dangerous. I mean, I know the edit is good in the sense that it sounds like nothing bad happened to the animals, but if you're not qualified to be dealing with animals, then surely that is still animal abuse. I mean, surely. Pretending to be a vet without a license, OP says, treating animals and forging prescriptions, each of those three alone could carry a jail time. And then they also finally say, I forgot to add in the post, but at least it looks like she didn't manage to harm any animals. Okay, this is what they then added as an edit at the end. But yeah, still illegal as anything. But there we go. Yeah, just crazy stuff. The animal thing in particular, that could have gone seriously wrong. I mean, what if she does seem like the sort of person that would just be like so like stupid in her own mind to just think, oh, you know, actually this is going all right. I know I'm not qualified, but I'm doing all right here. Let's just go one step further and start, like actually diagnosing animals, like doing operations, that sort of stuff. I don't care. I'll do it. Like I'm breaking the law anyway. Who cares? But thankfully, it seems as if it didn't get to that point. Crazy stuff nonetheless. And, you know, ultimately, we don't know if there was no harm done to animals. Maybe we'll get an update on this and see. I just really hope that nothing happened. But there we go. Revenge by my dad on the man who harassed his sister. I lost my dad 20 days ago. The hurt is fresh. Not sure of the legality, but since dad is gone, I guess this story can't harm anyone anymore. That is how you know this is going to be nuclear, when you read a sentence like that. My dad was my hero in more than one way. He was a wonderful storyteller, and there are so many stories about him. Here is one that is my personal favourite. My dad is the youngest of 9 siblings. He had 6 brothers and 2 sisters. He loved his siblings, and as the youngest sibling, he was loved and pampered. One thing that me and him share is our short temper. As a young man, my dad was known to be volatile. When he was 19, his second older sis, let's call her Cami, was married to a military man. He was mostly posted on the border. We are Indians. This meant my auntie Cami was living with her in-laws, like many women in India still do. The problem was her older brother-in-law. Let's call him Alex for a-hole. Alex was a goon, an extortionist, an abuser, and yes, an R-worder. He was scary. He was known for being physically imposing at 6'8". He was well built and was unbeatable in fights. No woman was safe when he was around. After my aunt Cami got married to her husband, the nasty brother-in-law Alex set his sight on her. He began harassing her, forcing her to sleep with him. The family did nothing to protect her. This went on for weeks. She was tired of fighting and was totally shattered emotionally. One day, she found the courage to talk about it to one of her older nephews, who was 18 at the time. He went home to my dad and broke down about how Cami was suffering and how her honor and life is at risk. This enraged my dad, but he realized that he wouldn't be able to take down the monster that Alex is all by himself. He gathered his friends, his older nephews, and together they hatched a plan. Actually, they had no plan. The plan was just to beat the absolute heck out of Alex, to send him a message, but they wouldn't be able to do this when he was sober. So they waited for the evening when he was usually drunk. My dad and his friends drank as well for liquid courage. They then waited for him in the dark roads of their village, which still had sketchy electricity. Then they pounced on him as soon as they had the chance. It was 6 young, drunk fools against this one mountain of a guy. While drunk, he was still able to fight well. Alex also had a bunch of minions who, unknown to my dad, were right behind him. It became a free-for-all. My dad, drunk and in the frenzy of the fight, grabbed a piece of wood he found on the road and hit Alex with all his might, straight on the head. And then my dad and his friends ran off because someone had called for backup and these young lads weren't sober enough to come up with a plan or a sane idea. Dad somehow made it home, showered and slept. The next day he told his mum they got into a fight and stuff went down. As he was telling his mum what happened, Dad was informed by his brother that the cops were looking for him. Grandma told Dad to lay low for a bit. Unfortunately, Alex made it to the hospital and was able to give a statement. Dad was on the run for a bit, but later surrendered because, according to him, I was tired of eating terrible food. They, honest to God, surrendered to the cops and demanded a good meal. Wow. The case was dismissed and Alex did manage to live, but he didn't survive for long. The injury my dad gave him chased him to his grave in a few months. This story is something Dad always likes to tell. He has zero remorse for what happened to Alex, because in his words, not a single woman was harmed or abused in their village after this incident. I miss my dad. I'm sure he had many more stories like this, but I will never know them. Okay, there we go. A pretty serious story to start, but yeah, respect to your dad, I suppose. The one thing I'm not entirely sure about is, even if this story did come out when your dad was still alive, I don't think there would be enough evidence to really like convict him that much later on. But I mean, it's probably a good thing that it didn't really come out anyway, and that, you know, it wasn't public information like it is now when he was still around. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a violent person. I've never been in a fight in my life. But when stuff like this happens, who am I to say that violence isn't the answer? Seriously. I mean, if people didn't get this sort of treatment done to them at points in their lives, I think like they might just carry on doing stuff like this. It gets to the point where if somebody is causing this much pain, and I mean physical pain, not just emotional pain, of course, like how are they ever going to learn? How are they going to stop doing it? Maybe they never will. Maybe the answer is just to put them in jail for life. But I don't think that's that realistic, whereas something like this, it just is. Let me know in the comments down below. What do you think? Is violence very rarely, but sometimes the answer? I honestly think it probably is. Being the worst boss ever does not pay off. In the year 2003, the company I was working for closed down, so I sought out new employment. I was a machinist by trade with a great reputation, so it took me less than a day to get a job. We will call the new place Spiral because of the specialized tools they made. Anyway, I started out as one of the operators. The place was owner operated, meaning the owner was there daily. He had a floor supervisor that was actually pretty nice. After I'd been there around a year, the owner and super had a falling out, and the super left. For whatever reason, the owner, we should call him Dan, told me that I was in charge. A little backstory on Dan. He was in his 60s and had started the company out of his garage. He ended up buying a huge chunk of land and turned it into an industrial park, all while in his 20s. By now, he was one of the richest guys in the state. He was also the biggest jerk I had ever met. He treated every employee like garbage, except for me and one other guy. If we dared to talk to each other during work hours, he would scream at us. My promotion kind of financially trapped me. Dan would have no problems talking to me though, and he was the braggy sort of rich guy, while paying us the bare minimum. During our talks, I learned that he cooked his books. You see, the industrial park was owned by an entity that he created, while Spiral was owned by another. He would always make sure that the park entity charged Spiral enough in rent that it looked like the company was barely staying afloat. He also bragged that he'd taken a bunch of industrial waste and buried it on his property at home because it cost so much less. He made my life hell over the next decade, always keeping my pay just high enough that I couldn't afford to leave, while treating me and my guys like trash. I ended up with a 95% turnover rate on employees. I'm not exaggerating. 95% turnover rate. So 19 out of 20 of your employees left. That's mental. We ended up having to go to temp agencies, and towards the end, even they refused to send me people. Wow. I had to do some careful wording, but my duties ended up swelling to the point where I convinced Dan to let me say I was the plant manager. This right here was huge. I have no degree from college, but I now had a title and the experience. I started to look for a job in earnest, and after 6 months, I found one for a lot more money, with benefits. Yeah, Spiral had none. Now, over my time at Spiral, I had seen everyone that gave them notice be told to leave on the spot, and the company that hired me insisted I give them the 2-week notice. So I said I would, but I didn't. At the end of my last day, I sat at my desk and sent an email to the head of OSHA and the state's EPA office, 2 men that I'd gotten to know well. I filled them in on all the violations that Dan had disclosed. I also sent an email to the state's attorney about the books. I left my keys on my desk with a paper under them that simply read, "I quit." I never found out if the state's attorney went anywhere, but the contact at OSHA let me know the company ended up with $150,000 in fines for some willful violations, and the guy from the EPA dug up half of Dan's property before he admitted to where he buried the waste. Last I knew, he ended up in jail. Now, interestingly enough, OP actually said at the top of this one that they originally shared it in Petty Revenge, but they were told they should post it in Nuclear Revenge instead. And yeah, this is not Petty Revenge at all. I think you got the wrong subreddit there. I mean, $150,000 in fines is not petty. That is pretty serious. Can't quite get over that turnover rate in employees though. I mean, 19 out of 20 roughly employees leave. You just know that it's probably not the best working environment when that is going on. Goodness me. Okay, now we're shifting things up and moving over to a different subreddit. So these stories probably aren't as nuclear, but don't worry. They are revenge stories, and that is the name of the subreddit nonetheless. I blackmailed the maintenance man at my grandma's senior center. Hi, I am a 41-year-old woman. I had to do some community service for a misdemeanor charge I was found guilty of, so I went to the senior center in my town. Immediately upon arriving and being introduced to the person in charge, aka the maintenance man, he was hitting on me. We did no work at all. We walked straight through the cafeteria and out the back door and sat on a bench where he proceeded to tell me how awful his life was, how he was in a loveless marriage, his wife was handicapped, on and on. I felt bad for him until he started talking about the other girls that came through. They sent him pics and he signed their paperwork to say they did their community service. Maybe I wanted to do the same? I don't remember what I said, but I left and didn't go back, pretending it didn't happen. Then I only had a week left in my sentence to have my community service done, and I didn't do any of it. I had 4 out of 40 completed, so I did the only thing I could think of. I texted the maintenance man and told him I wasn't going to send him nudes, but he was going to sign my paperwork, or I would tell his boss and the court what he was doing. So he signed it. Then I told my probation officer not to use them anymore and why. I wanted to call his boss, but never did. I just wanted to make sure that he wasn't taking advantage of the women in that program anymore. Just to clear things up, he is no longer part of the program because I did turn him in the same day I blackmailed him. I regret not doing it sooner, and I regret not telling his employer and his wife. Funny ending to this one is one day I was at work telling some girls about this guy, and later on that day, one of them pulled me aside and told me that the maintenance man is her stepdad. She started crying, saying she knew he was doing this to her mum, but her mum won't believe her, and maybe now she will. I felt terrible for her. I told her to have her mum call me and I would tell her all of it. But I never heard anything, and as far as I know, they're still together, and he still works there. Which sucks, because now I'm 50 and can go there, and it's awesome. The craft room is insane. They have a choir, lots of exercise equipment, free transportation, and day trips everywhere, but I don't want to see him. If I had the balls, I would totally go and make sure I said, hey, remember me? Oh God, what a horrible person. I mean, just what a horrible person. I really wish that, like, you know, this isn't, as I said, this isn't from Nuclear Revenge. This is just from r/revenge stories. And this is one of those stories where I wish the revenge was nuclear. Like, the fact that that guy is still working there now is ridiculous. I feel like this is one of those where you need to find out and get in contact with other women that this has happened to. I don't know how you would, but maybe, talk to some other staff at this location and sort of explain what's going on and what this guy has done to you and other women. And maybe they'll have the contact details of others that have worked there before. I mean, they should, right? They should have the community service details. Whatever. Like, you need to do something about this because this guy is just taking advantage of you. And I sort of get it. Like, if you're someone that has to do community service and this guy's, exploiting you, sure, but like offering you a decent deal, you can do this and get off completely. Don't know. I can't like really blame any of these girls for doing this. It's just so like, yeah, as I said, exploitative and manipulative and just disgusting. Just very, very gross. This is what I say. Like, sometimes is violence the answer? I don't know. This guy's got away with it completely, in my opinion. Yeah, there was a little bit of revenge, but barely any. I mean, look, fair play to you for actually getting him to stop and not take advantage of women. But is that revenge? Getting someone to stop what they were doing? Not really. Like, where's the revenge there? They've just stopped. It's a shame. I wanted more there. Now for our final revenge story of this one. A lousy friend. This is about my ex-friend Ivy. We grew up together, did everything side by side, and had each other's backs always. About 5 years ago, I really needed her the most, as I was in a really rough period. I lost my job, and not long after, my boyfriend broke up with me. I needed a place to stay for a while as I figured things out. Ivy, who more times than I can count I'd given a place to stay when she was struggling, and when she was going through breakups, couldn't help me. This one time I needed her. She just said, "Look, I wish I could help, but things are tight." All I needed was a place to stay. I'd pay for everything else I was going to need or use. I managed it somehow with the help of another friend. I found another job and I was doing okay again. Now, fast forward a couple of years and I was doing better than ever. Great job, my own place, a solid life. Then, out of nowhere, and after years of no communication, Ivy showed up at my door. Guess what? She needed a place to stay for a few weeks since she was down on her luck. I just looked at her, thought about all the times I'd been there for her and all the times she wasn't there for me. Then I smiled and said exactly what she said to me. I wish I could help, but things are tight. It wasn't something huge, but it felt great. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just letting people feel the loneliness and absence they once left you with. And there we go. That probably is the moral of the story right there. Look, we started with some nuclear revenge in today's episode, ended with some more minor stuff. But yeah, I agree. This is just karma personified. And I think that you're right. It doesn't have to be loud. Revenge doesn't have to be grandiose, crazy, even nuclear. Sometimes it's better to just send a message with something like this. In this case, it's a literal message just saying, you know what? No, you did this to me. I'm doing this to you. How do you like it? But other times I do feel like, yeah, maybe it's better to go a little bit more overboard just for the fun of it. This time it wasn't one of those occasions. And I think what you did was perfect. It would have been nice, I think, as well to just, and maybe she did infer this from what you said or the tone of what you said, but you're doing well and you have your own place and you probably, well, definitely could have taken her in once again. I mean, if you took her in before when things were worse for you, you can definitely take her in now. I hope she knows that. I hope she knows that things aren't tight for you, that you're doing well and that you were saying that sarcastically, because yeah, that's when it would hit the hardest. If you're like, oh God, this is because I said what I said and didn't take her in. I should have done that. Little bit too late though. Sorry about that. You want to hit a disabled person? Have fun with 30 plus years in jail. This happened in January, but the district attorney called me 2 days ago with the update. I am a wheelchair user because of a fainting disorder, severe POTS for those wondering. Now, POTS stands for postural tachycardia syndrome, when your heart rate increases very quickly after getting up from sitting or lying down, often making you feel dizzy or lightheaded. Okay, I didn't know that. There's currently actually no cure as well. Well, firstly, OP, I'm very sorry that you suffer from that. Anyway, let's get back into the story. I came home from work to see a car parked right under a no parking fire lane and on the sidewalk. It blocked the way into my apartment and I had to leave the wheelchair in my car. I started taking photos of the car because this had been an issue with the owner for months. My landlord had told me to get photos of it and email them to him every time she did it after I mentioned it in passing. While taking a photo, the owner came out of her apartment to scream at me. I stayed calm and I tried to walk into my apartment. She got in my face to continue screaming, and by reflex, I just shoved her back. She then grabbed me by the throat and began to punch me. After a minute, my neighbours and roommate, who were having a smoke, came running and got her off of me. Police were called. Paramedics showed up because my neck was bleeding, she had acrylic nails, and I ended up going to the ER because I had a syncope episode while the paramedics were there. Now again, a syncope is another word for fainting or passing out. I wasn't sure about that, but there we go. Someone is considered to have syncope if they become unconscious and go limp, then soon recover. I decided to press charges, thinking I'd just get an aggravated assault or something. I made sure that they got her while she was home because I knew she had a gun on the wall despite being a convicted felon. When the police went to arrest her, they found that the car was stolen without insurance, she didn't have a license, there were used needles all over the apartment with her 8-year-old child, and the gun was also marked stolen. The child is in foster care and she is now in jail without bond. The DA said that her child recorded it. She apparently told her to, and it was already ruled as an assault because of the overwhelming proof, plus the 7 counts of assault she's gotten in the past 5 years already. Oh my goodness. Had I gotten her nailed with it outside her home, she would have only gotten probation, since she was a parent. But now she's lost her kid, her home, her car, and she's going to be in jail for about 30 years or more, depending on what the state charges her with for the drugs. Wow. I mean, wow. Just coming out of your house and grabbing someone by the throat and punching them in the face. What sort of person does that? It's just insane. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest, if this revenge is nuclear. I think it's more just like the justice that this woman deserved. Like, yeah, 30 years is a lot, but that's the way she's lived her life. She's done so many illegal things that she deserves 30 years. Like, I think nuclear would be if you had grabbed her by the throat and then just killed her. That probably would be more nuclear. But yeah, being realistic, I think that this is completely legitimate, and, you know, the law has said she deserves to go to jail for 30 years or more. That's not nuclear, that's just justice. I'm not sure what the damage was to you in the end. You didn't actually say how badly you were damaged. I mean, you went to the ER, but were you there for a while or not? I'm not sure. I mean, your neck was bleeding, that's never good. But it sounds to me as if you did society a favor by taking this hit. Yeah, it wasn't a good thing for you. And whether or not you stayed in the ER for a long time or not, it's terrible. However, getting this woman off the streets, out of society and into jail for that length of time is a great thing. You had to sacrifice your neck, but it was worth it. Wow. What a terrible, terrible woman. Let's move on to the second story. Now moving on to our next revenge story. I got poisoned by my old job. I called in my dad, outed them for illegal practices, caused my 2 brothers that worked with me to quit with me, and plunged their store down their ranking lists. Now I warn everyone not to buy anything from there. This is going to be a long one, so settle down, friends, as I tell you the horrors of this danged store. So, I, a 21-year-old man, used to work at a particular chain of southern grocery stores that sounds like the word Pringles. I worked at their stores from age 18 to 21, and I only quit last year. I'm turning 22 in July. So yeah, these stores were the only places I ever worked. I don't want to get into all the nasty details, or we'd be here for years, but this corporation is so messed up and corrupt. They did everything from shuffling around sexual offenders from store to store to firing people based off of race and religion. I myself got harassed a ton by another worker and several recurring customers, and nothing was ever done about it. But that's a different story. Now, on to why I quit from the first store. At this time, I was freshly 19. I was the main cook at the Asian food station at the deli, on top of manning several other stations. I was kneeling down to get the sauces from a low fridge when I breathed in, and I felt something hit me in the back of the brain. I was thrown off for a second, but I figured I was fine. They had an outside contractor in our area doing some work, so I just assumed that I caught a whiff of a cleaner that he was working with. I picked up the wok of orange chicken I'd been making, and I brought it up to the serving station and put it up, when one of the servers, a very sweet elderly woman, asked if I was okay, looking very concerned. I still felt fine at the moment, so I said yes, but that was it, for the moment. I immediately felt the worst brain haze I'd ever felt. My feet went out from under me and my vision went completely blurry. I stumbled backwards and I was able to catch myself on the counter behind me. Later on, the server told me she asked if I was okay because I hadn't only just lost all my colour, I'd gone grey. It felt like all my balance was gone. I worked with two of my brothers at the same location and one of them came running to help me stand. I had vague memories of my brother helping me walk to the indoor cafe, but my head was literally lulling in circles. I couldn't keep it upright. I think I almost fell on one of the managers from the front of the store. My brother made me sit down at a table and got me a cup of water. That's when I realised I was crying. My heart was pounding so hard, my entire front of my uniform was moving with it. Whatever my body was reacting to was so bad, it was overwhelming it. I felt like I couldn't move. I was just sunk into the chair, crying. I tried to pick up the cup, and my brother had to come back to help me take a drink. At this point, I was panicking. A fact about the kitchen that I, as the head chef, was painfully aware of: we had a gas-run pizza oven, a really old gas-run oven. A gas-run oven that you had to kick to get all 4 burners to get on. I'll tell you now though, that wasn't a gas leak, but that's where my brain immediately went to, especially since they refused to do maintenance on that oven, or the gas-run open flame woks, one machine away from said oven. This whole time I felt like I wanted to throw up, but at the same time I couldn't. The supervisor told my brother he had to stop checking on me and that he'd get in trouble if he kept checking. The supervisor and other members of morning shift, I was a night shifter, my other night shifters know how it is, well, they were treating me like I was exaggerating. One of them came over, one of whom I particularly hated because she looked down on everyone, and started baby talking about how some people are just weaker than others. This whole time I was panicking and telling her I wasn't exaggerating, and everyone else needed to leave the deli until we figured out what it was. And it was affecting me so badly, it had been an hour and my body was still panicking. It was bad. She, though, just brushed me aside and left again. That's when I realised they weren't going to investigate what happened to me at all. And they were going to keep everyone, including my 2 brothers, working in the same area I just got affected in. That's when our absolute hero shows up. The nearby McDonald's manager. A sick dude around the same age as me that regularly got food at the deli. I'd served him a few times. He'd been sitting in the cafe on his lunch break from his job when he saw me. He immediately came over and asked what was wrong, as we were on bro terms. I gave him a breakdown on what was going on and he went over to check it out. He came back and said that he didn't smell a gas leak, but I was definitely displaying concerning signs. So, without linking himself to me, he went up to the front of the store and basically demanded they do something about it. However, the front management realised it must have been me, so their solution: not to find out what did this to me, to take me from the cafe, drag me up to the management office and sit me in a swivel chair so they could keep an eye on me. That's right, they sat a dude that couldn't balance on his own in a swivel chair next to a desk corner. They proceeded to completely ignore me and not let my brothers come into the office to talk to me, and I was still panicking about the fact that the other workers could breathe in whatever I had done. I was finally able to coordinate enough to pull my phone out of my apron pocket and text my dad. I texted him a very short list of PowerPoints of what happened, and he asked a few questions about why my management was acting like they were, which all I could say was, I don't know. Now, this wasn't my proudest moment. A 19-year-old guy who'd been crying for over an hour and couldn't stop, texting his dad, I don't know what's happening, Dad, but I'm scared and I need you. You know what, bro? I've got to interject here and say respect for sending that message. That just shows that you're not too proud. I mean, people that are too proud wouldn't send that message. People that, have too much of an ego, even when they clearly need as much help as they can. I mean, who knows at this point? You might have been dying. I mean, we'll get on to more of the story in a second, but you've got to send these messages and not let your pride get in the way. So yeah, you shouldn't say that you're not proud. You should actually say that you're proud of not being too proud to send a message like that, if that makes sense. Anyway, let's get back into it. My dad told me he was on his way and to clock out. I told the managers my dad was coming and I needed to clock out. At this point, they were acting annoyed with me, especially the store owner. I could talk for days about how terrible the store managers were, so they were glad I was leaving. They offered to help me walk to the time clock. I should have taken their offer, but I was so angry and disappointed I refused, and I just held onto the front desk and shelving as I got to the clock out room. I clocked out and I stumbled my way back to the area I worked at to get my stuff. I had to bring my own supplies to work because they never gave us new equipment, so I had a whole backpack I needed to grab. My brothers immediately tried to run over to me when they saw me, but the manager blocked them and told them to keep working. How toxic is that? Before I could get my backpack, my manager, a woman that I'd been working under since I was 18 and frankly scared me, blocked me from going into the back room to get my bag and started demanding answers from me. Once again, this is not a proud moment. I have a medical condition that made me stop growing at 14, so I'm pretty easily intimidated. She was taller and stronger than me, and I still felt completely vulnerable. All of my senses were still shot, and my body was still in panic mode. I tried to answer her questions, but I was just mumbling and stumbling over my own words. That's when I saw him. My dad. My dad is a 5'6" man who worked as a jack-of-all-tradesman for most of my childhood. I'm talking plumber, electrician, groundskeeper, roofer, builder. At this time, he was working as a contractor, so he quite literally was building and modifying higher class houses in the mountains. He came storming in his contracting gear with a bandana wrapped around his head. That is when I knew I was going to be okay. My brothers talked about it later, but if anyone knew anything about my dad, if he had that bandana on, he was going after someone, and they were royally screwed. He walked up and immediately crossed his arms, demanding to know what happened to his kid. Once again, not a proud moment, but I moved to hide behind him. My manager was caught off guard for a moment, but recovered and started telling my dad that I'd just overreacted to a cleaner the contractor was using. At that time, I'd figured it must have been something that the contractor was using, but I didn't know for sure, so the fact they knew what had done this to me and didn't feel the need to tell me made me mad, but it annoyed my dad so much. He demanded to talk to the contractor. If you've ever heard a 49-year-old man get mad, you can imagine the tension in his voice. He didn't yell. He never yells. But when he gets serious, the tension in his voice is genuinely terrifying. The contractor they hired came over. That's when my dad's expertise clicked in. My dad, the contractor. In other words, the guy that knew all the local laws around contracted labour. He asked all the right questions. He demanded to see what the contractor had been spraying around the kitchen that day. When they handed him the can, he tore the contractor a new one. So the kitchen I work in is blocked from the rest of the deli area by a counter. A counter has about an inch of space under it for cleaning purposes. So when I leaned down, this spray had shot under the counter and directly into my face. And what was that spray? An industrial grade degreaser. It was so strong it was meant to be used in empty factories by someone in a full respirator mask. It wasn't supposed to be sprayed around people, and especially not right in someone's face. My dad immediately pointed this out and demanded to see the contractor's safety sheet on the chemical, something that all contractors in our area are required to carry on every chemical they use to show they know how to safely use it. The contractor said he had it in his van. He did not. The man was using one of the strongest factory-grade degreasers on the market, and he didn't know how to use it. He was wearing a mask while using it, sure, but not a respirator. It was just a plain white dust cover. My dad lost his mind and sent me past my manager to get my bag while he tore them apart. Oh, and the illegal part? Well, the company wasn't supposed to hire outside contractors for this exact reason, but my manager did so that the work wouldn't be filed, so it would seem like our store didn't take any company resources for repair jobs. Anyway, my dad took me home and my siblings came back too. My dad went onto his PC and looked at the full information page on the degreaser. I was in the second stage of serious poisoning. It wouldn't kill me, thankfully, but it wasn't fun. At this point, I had a little bit of my balance back, but I was still panicking and confused. I was able to draft up a text, ripping them a new one, and quitting. I had a pounding headache, and I ended up throwing up 3 times before I fell asleep that night. I woke up the next day unemployed, but a lot happier. I had a headache for several days. I ended up working for the company again for around a year in the future, but that's a different story. Now, every time I get the chance, I out all the garbage I can on this dumpster fire of a trash company. And let me tell you just a few bullet points of dirt I have on them, just for a little more revenge. They wanted me to serve frozen soup that expired in 2018 in 2021. They marked rotisserie chicken that wasn't organic as organic and sold it at a marked up price. They wanted us to cook chicken that went green. They reused expired meat from the meat counter in the ready serve food. They called people slurs outright, okay, as if all the disgusting food stuff wasn't bad enough. They're just calling people slurs. Great. They used outside contractors with no safety standards. The managers shuffle around offenders from store to store and hire offenders that the employees ask them to ban from the store. They purposely marked up prices during times of need, hurricanes, droughts, etc. They have entire teams whose only job is to take down posts about them online because they're that terrible. They called the police on a homeless man trying to stay in the warm during a below freezing day. He wasn't bothering a soul. They didn't update the equipment, leading to several injuries. 2 of my co-workers lost large parts of their fingers. They delayed training until the last moments, leading to my training being 167 days overdue when I did it. They didn't fire an employee that slashed 2 other employees' tires and was known as a stalker. She followed someone all the way to their house. And finally, they had a food safety grade A sign up from 2019, but their current grade was barely above a C, technically a B. And so many freaking more. But this is part of my revenge. If you're in the South and see one of these dang stores, just don't go. Go into Publix. They're better. They treat their employees better. And honestly, I've never met an ex-employee from Pringles that doesn't want the entire corporation to fail and be gone. Anyways, that's the story of what happened and my never-ending revenge. I will never stop outing them for the trash corporation they are, and neither will my family. I sincerely hope I live to see that company gone. Revenge forever. Sincerely, a man that hates that corporation with his entire being. Wow, there we go. Great story. Yeah, it was a long one, but I love the long ones. A lot of context in there. The story was great. And I think the first thing I need to do, and I don't live in America, so I've actually never heard of this store, but just looking through the comments, and I'm allowed to say this because I'm not the one that's accusing this store of doing anything in particular or, having these sort of practices where they let their staff just call people slurs or whatever to one another or employ offenders, etc. But it looks to me like the name of the store is called Ingles. Now, I've not heard of it. Those of you in America, let me know if I'm right or not. But yeah, apparently it's a pretty small chain, only a little over 200 locations. But I can say this: avoid it. I'm not in danger of anyone saying to me that I've made some defamatory remarks or anything that's too incriminating. But just from what I'm seeing here, avoid this store like the plague. Let me make sure it's called Ingles. Yeah, I'm not going to be sued for that. But there we go. That is the name of the store, apparently. Now, one thing that I have to say is, why, OP, did you not go to hospital throughout all of this? It doesn't matter what your manager or your the other staff are saying to you. You could have been dying. I don't know what was. You must have had no idea what was going on. Surely someone should have said, go to hospital. The fact that the staff were stopping your brothers from seeing you. If I'm your brothers, I don't care. I'm getting in there. I'm saying, no, we're going to hospital right now. That's the only thing I don't really understand about this story. But overall, yeah, great stuff. And you're right. If telling your story online, even me narrating it now, giving my thoughts on it, and you guys all listening and watching to this helps people not go to Ingles anymore, I think it's worth it. Hopefully I can't get sued for this, but I don't mind saying what I've just said based on what I've just read. Okay, now for our third revenge story. Revenge on my former neighbor who vandalized my vehicle. This happened about 15 years ago. My wife and I purchased a home deep in the country in an effort to simplify our lives. We quickly met our neighbors and everything seemed good. A year or so after we moved into the home, my wife got pregnant with our first child. I traveled periodically for work at the time and I was out of town. My wife was wanting to take a relaxing soak in the tub as her feet had swollen due to the pregnancy. As she was trying to relax, the neighbor's dog was barking incessantly. The dog was a large breed and had a big bark. This went on and on for 30 minutes or so. My wife had a pregnancy psycho moment and got out of the tub, put on her bathrobe, and screamed out the door at the neighbor to shut their barking dog up. Well, here is where the story gets pretty fun. The neighbor went full-on redneck on us. They renamed their Wi-Fi SSID to, quote, "I love barking dogs." We would find random things vandalized on our property. One day I came home from work to see my wife picking stuff up from the driveway. Well, it turns out that this redneck had thrown some poorly made nail devices in our driveway in an attempt to puncture my truck's tires. The next event was truly diabolical. I left for work the next morning, and by the time I got to the interstate, my brakes felt sort of squishy. I pulled into a truck stop to inspect the truck. The petcock valve on my front right brake caliper had been loosened, and my brake fluid had mostly drained out. This guy tried to kill me. I went postal, but with insidious methods. I work in the IT field, so technology is my thing. I had an old laptop that I installed an OS on that is used for security penetration testing, and I cracked their Wi-Fi. I printed interesting things on their printer, including a convincing email from another woman to the husband. I printed prawn photos. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when the cow found that. I discovered that I could go online and sign up for a prison romance pen pal. I signed his wife up and wrote a letter that was supposedly from her. I gave their address and I told the inmate enough about their life, how long they'd been married, what the hubby did for a living, how many kids, dogs, etc. they had, stuff like that, to make it convincing. I expect that her husband had a few words for her after that. I've never told this story before, and I hope it brings someone else even a little bit of joy. That was a funny one. Now, importantly, guys, some of you might be wondering, like me, okay, that's great and all, but did anything actually happen? As in, what were the repercussions? Because this guy has tried to kill you and you haven't gone to the police. So somebody actually asked OP in the comments, okay, but did this actually achieve anything? And OP said, we moved shortly after. I heard they got divorced a couple of years later. So there we go. Sounds like this did have the desired effect. But yeah, crazy, crazy neighbors. This is my fear. I'm actually trying to get a place at the moment, right? And I'm slightly concerned because how do you ever know what your neighbors are going to be like? If you've got people like this next to you, this makes such a difference compared to having, just normal neighbors. You can have the nicest house in the world, be in the nicest place in the world. But if your neighbors are going to be like this and try and kill you, none of that really matters. So maybe I'm thinking of the worst here, but yeah, I wouldn't want to have neighbors like this, that's for sure. However, I suppose if I do, then I'll have some great stories to tell. Now for the final story of this episode. Sent flowers to a, quote, dead ex. I am an 18-year-old guy, and I had an ex who was an 18-year-old girl who I haven't talked to in months. Fast forward to last week, I was talking to a group of friends and her name came up in conversation from a friend of a friend. This friend thought that her and I were still together, and when I explained that we weren't, we continued the conversation about it, and it got me thinking how she's been. Mind you, she went ghost and really made me hurt, but because I'm a very apologetic person, I didn't let it bother me. After the conversation though, I thought I'd reach out and just see how she's doing. So I text her friend, because she's got me blocked, just to see how she's doing. And her friend was all cool about it and the whole thing seemed fine. Until my ex texted my friend, acting like her sister, saying she had died. Little did she know, I remember when she pulled the same stunt with their ex before me. So, the revenge. Me and a group of friends made the 51-minute drive to her house to pay our respects. What we did was we went to a gas station and bought all of their flowers, put them in a basket, and put a card in it marked with our deepest condolences. The card was filled with some of the finest glitter we could find at the dollar store, and off we went to deliver everything. When we get to her house, I told my friends to stay back while I went up and knocked on the door. I set the flowers down on the porch and I walked away. As I'm walking away, however, her dad answered the door and went, "Can I help you?" To which I replied, "I'm sorry for your loss. Her name meant so much to me and it's sad to see her go." In confusion, her dad responded, "She's not dead." As me and the boys leave, her and her friends show up in her car. Then she looks at me and my friends and says, "What are you doing here?" "Well, I thought you died," I replied. Her dad was furious and essentially took all of her freedoms away until summer and actually gave me and my friends each $20 for the inconvenience and gas money. Okay, honestly, who does that? Who jokes about their own death like that? Unless you're 12. and you just have no common sense. But like, ghosting is one thing. Joking about your own death or faking your own death is so dumb. Also, it's so obvious that you're not dead. Like, it's not that hard for someone to work out, oh, are you dead or alive? Like, you don't even have to go to their house. Just go on the internet. It really can't be that hard to know. Also, like, word of mouth. Imagine being her dad. He's probably just like, what are you doing? Like, he's probably sick of her doing this sort of stuff. Probably knows that she's done it before. And that's the reason why he's actually like furious and is like, you know what, guys, thanks for telling me, because this is ridiculous. I'm going to give you all some money because of the inconvenience. And she's not doing anything this summer. Like, it's actually insane. The dad's probably a nice guy. The daughter, Jesus, horrible. A guy left me stranded on a first date. I am a 19-year-old woman, and I went on a date with a guy who was also 19 for the first time. It was a beautiful day where we lived, so he took me to this nature park and we went on a walk. We talked about our lives, and I honestly thought it was going really well. After the walk, he said he needed to use the bathroom. I did too, so he drove to the nearest store where we could pee, which was a Best Buy. I went to the bathroom and he did too. When I came out, I waited. I waited, and I waited for him to come out. Finally, I got worried and I texted him. The message didn't go through, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt and assumed his phone died. I then got tired of waiting and went to check to see if his car was still in the parking lot. Sure enough, it wasn't. I went back inside and asked the person at the front if they saw a man, I gave his description, leave the store. They said they saw him run out of the store in a hurry a bit ago. So he left me, stranded, at a freaking Best Buy 20 minutes from my house. I Uber home and I'm fuming. So I decided to find his family members on social media and tell them what he did. I eventually found who I think to be his sister, and I told her the whole story. She ensured I would get my things back as some was still in his car, and even offered to reimburse me for the Uber. Some of you may think I'm crazy, but when one goes low, I go lower. I got my things back and they were clearly thrown in my yard out of his window. Someone was mad their family now knows what a POS they are. And unbelievably, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see on screen right now OP's front lawn with a picture of the stuff that's been thrown, I assume, by this guy onto her lawn. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm not quite sure what we've got there. Some sort of coffee mug, maybe a jumper or something as well behind it, with the caption, clearly he just threw it outside his window. OP has left a little edit on this. For those who care for an update, surprise, there isn't one. He blocked me on everything, and I don't even want to talk to him again, nor do I care to hear his sorry excuse. And for those who are blaming me, go frick yourself. I'm not leaving out any details. If I was, I probably would have just dropped the whole thing and forgotten about my things, because it's not like it was anything majorly important. But since he wanted to be a jerk, yeah, I'm gonna inconvenience you and make your behavior known. I was nice, attentive, and respectful the whole date. I look like my photos, I dress nicely, and I have good hygiene. And regardless of any of that, the only excuse to just ditching someone at a store in the middle of a date is if they are being verbally or physically abusive. Other than that, I should have at least received a ride home. No other excuses would really suffice. If you offer to take me out, take me home too. Period. All I can say after reading that is what a jerk. I mean, the good news for you, at least, OP, is now you know that he is a terrible person and you're never going to see him again. But goodness me, as you said, the least you can do is just say, you know what, I'm not really having a great time here. I'm not feeling the vibe. I'm just going to drive you home. And yeah, it's been nice to get to know you, but that's it. But doing this is a genuine disgrace. And I am happy that his sister knows about this. If I did this on some of the dates that I've been on, and my sister found out, she'd be like, what are you doing? That is not how you treat anyone, let alone someone you've just met. And, you know, they've put a lot of trust in you. They've got in your car, you're a stranger, etc., etc. And you just leave them stranded at a Best Buy 20 minutes from their house. It's despicable behavior. So you did the exact right thing. And I'm glad now that his family know about him. You can tell he wasn't happy, though, the fact that he just threw your stuff on the lawn out of his car window. What a jerk. Now for our next story of revenge. My mate got revenge for my mum. This happened in the early 1990s. My mum bought a convenience store from a con man. He convinced her that he had cancer and only months to live, and my mum fell for it, paying way too soon and way over the odds, about double what the shop was worth. The guy had cooked his books and showered her fake tax returns, showing the shop had a certain turnover when it was actually running at about 30% of that claim. She struggled on for 3 or 4 years, but had to pack it in and sold for a big loss. Last year, she told me that when she sold the shop, a mate of mine got revenge for her. Let's call him Bart, whom I've known since we were both 4 years old, and who of course she knew well. At the time of all of this shop business, I was living overseas. Anyways, once the shop was gone and Mum had moved away, Bart started a relationship with the con man, pretending to work up a relationship in case he wanted to sell. Of course, the con man never had cancer, the idiot. After a few years, the con man decided to sell and downsize as his kids had grown up, giving Bart the contract to sell on his behalf. Bart now had access to the con man's house. Taking a look around after an open house, he found a sealed box in the crawl space in his ceiling. It weighed a ton. He cut open the bottom flap so he could reseal it, and he took a look inside. He reckoned there was over 2 kilograms in gold bars. Over the following week, he had lead bars made up by a bloke who made his own fishing sinkers, and then came the switcheroo. But he was clever. He left the top layer of gold in place. The house sold and the con man moved out 3 months later. There's never been mention of the missing gold. Bart sold the gold and gave the contributions to my mother, whom Bart swore to secrecy, even from me, but she finally spilt the beans to me last year. It was about $35,000 Australian, well short of all she had lost, but it made a massive difference to her life at that time. Well, there we go. Bart is definitely a friend for life. What a good lad. Back in the day when I used to watch The Simpsons, I was always a big fan of Bart Simpson. So now anyone called Bart just automatically has a soft spot in my heart. So respect for continuing on the legacy of Bart being a great name and a great bloke. Well done, that man. To be honest, he's just a great guy, isn't he? It's almost like your mum now has another son looking over her and just making sure she's all right. That took a lot of effort, by the way, I'm sure, to procure that relationship over I don't know how many years. Just hoping that one day this con man was willing to sell his property or move on, or just trying to get as much trust in that relationship as Bart could to then eventually do this. I mean, it didn't have to be the fact that he found 2 kilograms of gold bars. He could have done anything at this point. The house was in his hands. But yeah, doing what he did, and I know it wasn't the same amount of money that OP's mum lost by selling the business for much less than she bought it from the con man for, but still, 35,000 Australian dollars stolen is pretty elite. Yeah, it's illegal, but in this situation, I think it's fine. Okay, now the moment you've all been waiting for, let's get into the third revenge story of this episode, the juiciest of all three. Now for our final revenge story. Short me $70,000 in violation of our agreement. It'll cost you $1.8 million. Disclaimer. The names and some of the situations have been changed to protect identities, but the dollars and general nature of the situation is completely true. Background. A year out of school in the early 1990s, I procured a job as a business analyst for a large family-owned tech company. This business was located in the booming heart of technology at the time and was very profitable. As tech took off over the next decade, the company thrived and remained family-owned. What was a rich family and company became exceedingly wealthy, with a valuation/net worth in the high 9/low 10 figures. The family that owned it was quite neurotic, very moody, and had a reputation as very ruthless or greedy when it came to financing, deal-making, employees, etc. I truly believe this is what held them back from ultimately becoming a household name as a company. As I progressed in the company, I gained more and more face time with the owners. I worked on some projects directly with ownership that really paid off and gained me even greater access to their inner circle. Now, like a lot of people at the time, and particularly those who worked in tech, I was heavily invested in tech stocks. I discussed some of my investments and gains with ownership as casual conversation, though investing had nothing to do with my role in the company. That is, until one day in late 1999, when the owner came to me and asked me if I would invest some of his personal money. He wanted me to take big risks and see if they would pay off using $1 million of his personal money. I was a bit hesitant, but still being in my late 20s and wanting to prove myself, I said I would. I asked for a written agreement where they acknowledged this wasn't my role in the company, was a personal matter between the owner and me, and to document my compensation for this side arrangement, 20% of all profits. Around this same time, and by working in the industry, I started to notice the weakness associated with a lot of tech companies. They just weren't living up to their hype and stock price, and some seemed like they were starting to run out of money. I had no inside information, just a strong sense of which companies were struggling based on my work in the business. Based on this sense, I started using both my money and the owner's money to short tech companies just after the new year in 2000. For anyone unfamiliar with shorting, it means if the value of a stock decreases, the value of the investment increases. I had a few long positions, but my overall position was very short, pretty much betting against the stock market, or at least against these tech companies. Since the owner wanted big risk and big reward, I used his money and obtained leverage or margin from the financial institution where I maintained both his and my trading accounts. The accounts were separate, but both under my name. Again, I documented this and gained consent. Well, both my account and his suffered some moderate losses in the first 2 months of 2000 before the bubble began to burst. And both accounts, but his in particular, began to skyrocket. In June, the company began to suffer a downturn. We were still profitable, but since we provided tech services and products, we were not immune to weakness in the broader market. I had not informed the owner of my short strategy. He came to me one day and asked how his money was doing, saying he suspected it was way down like the general market. To his surprise, I informed him that while we still had some money tied up in options, puts, and shorts, but based on the positions I had closed, there was 1.35 million in cash sitting in the account that belonged to him. Again, I still had a bunch of open positions, which, if memory serves, were worth about $1 million on that day, but the positions I had closed had yielded $1.35 million in cash just sitting in his account, which was in my name. The owner, either through ignorance or lack of attention, said, "Great, $1.35 million. Fantastic work in this down market. Will you please wire it to me?" I responded that I would, but of course I'd be taking my 20% of the $350,000 profit, or $70,000, before wiring him $280,000. I also reminded him I still had open positions that had yet to pay off or close, but I didn't state the amount. He once again appeared not to understand or comprehend the open position statement, but instead totally focused on and became incensed about my rightful claim for $70,000. He went on and on about how times were tough, I should be grateful for a job, particularly at my young age, and the entire $350,000 was necessary for him and the company. I knew this wasn't true, based on my position within the company. Worse, this was my first time personally experiencing the greedy and corrupt nature that served as the basis for ownership's reputation. So, the revenge. Since after 2 separate conversations, the owner didn't seem to grasp that the open positions would yield at least some income and thus additional profit, I decided not to mention it again. I sent him back the entire $1.35 million, and I continued to manage the open positions to the best of my ability. And here's the kicker, the owner never brought it up again. He seemed to think the $1.35 million payment was the entire value of the account and never understood or remembered that open positions still existed. He never asked for records, tax documents, or any time of audit or financials. Given the fact that he was dishonest with me, I actually didn't feel the need to disabuse him of that notion. Ultimately, after a bit more net gain, I covered all the shorts and I exercised all of the options, puts in this case, for an additional $1.8 million. I worked for the company for 3 more years, and the owner never asked about it during my tenure, after I gave notice, or since. I know it's a bit crass and even shady, but given his dishonesty with me over the $70K, I felt justified in keeping the additional $1.8 million. I paid taxes on the gain, long-term capital gain, and went on my way with a fantastic nest egg. Nobody has asked about it since, and I've only told the story to a few people, and even then only after the statute of limitations passed. The final ironic cherry on top of this sundae is that during my remaining 3 years, I gained greater influence with ownership in position within the company because they considered me loyal for giving the $1.35 million back and not making too much of a stink about the $70,000 profit. Little did they know, I got the better of them. The company eventually folded due to family disputes, but my understanding is that ownership walked away in very good financial position. They likely could have been a much better and greater company had they not practiced the same dishonesty that they showed me with their vendors, clients, and employees. Thanks for reading, and hope you enjoyed. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, there are a couple of short updates to this one, as this was actually posted quite a few years ago now. So let's first start with the update from 2023. There have been no negative consequences from the below, and no overall consequences, other than a few people DMing me with incorrect guesses. In fact, the remaining family members have reached out a time or two about some consulting work. They have no clue. And then, just 37 minutes ago at the time of recording, and that is why I wanted to include this story, we got this update from 2025. Quick, ironic update. There have still been no negative consequences for me. In fact, the older generation from the original company has retired or died, and the younger generation, around my age, have taken over their business lines. And, though I have my own business, we've begun working together on projects again. They obviously have no clue about the original 1.8 million, which now occurred approximately 20 years ago. Okay, there we go. Great story. I really enjoyed that. I can't quite believe that a family that has so much success, right? They've built a business that what you said was in the high 9, low 10 figures. I mean, that's insane. Low 10 figures is $1 billion. I can't quite believe that they didn't know that much about stocks, options, or didn't even ask to see the account at any point during you trading with one of the ownership's money. I mean, that's just insane to me. I suppose maybe the answer is in the fact that the company is worth so much money and these guys are worth so much money, they don't care about as little as $1.8 million or whatever. And they probably were like, oh yeah, I put in $1 million, I've got 1.3 back, that's fine, I don't care anymore about that, I don't even need to see anything, it's not worth my time. But still, the fact that they didn't ask more about, what was the rate of return, which stocks did particularly well, oh, how come you thought about shorting, etc. Just obvious questions. It's strange, isn't it? I mean, it is also just diabolical that you've not only made a lot of money for this individual, but then he's been like, oh yeah, well done, man. I'm going to keep it all. And that's it. Despite the fact that the business is worth so much money in the first place. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. But again, as I said in the introduction, this is definitely illegal. But once again, like the second story, you let me know in the comments down below, guys. Do you think this was legit? If you don't ask, you don't get. And this person clearly forgot, and now you're past the statute of limitations, and it's likely, as you said, that nobody else in the company knows. It's been 20 years. I think it's probably past the point of no return. His abuse led to my mum's death, so I took his house. So let's get this out of the way. I am a 34-year-old woman. My mum was 55, and my now ex-stepdad is 65. They co-own the home as joint tenants, and everything they had together was 50-50 at this point and time. Let's call my ex-stepfather Larry. So, my mum and Larry have been married for 16, 17 years. There's always been questionable behaviour, but it's none of my business, as I moved out at 18. Well, at 27, I decided I wanted to go to college to better myself. My mum and Larry both agreed and offered me and my small family the basement apartment of their home. 1.5 years into my program, my mum was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Now, a week before she was due to have surgery to remove the tumours, one of the big ones ruptured. One thing led to another, and my mum's cancer spread. She gets re-diagnosed with different cancer. It's rare, and it's in the connective tissue. She gets given a 2-year estimate without treatments. Now, this is where Larry starts becoming abusive. He's at this appointment with my mum and has a full-blown tantrum. Notes: I have my mum's medical notes and a doctor who noted all of this. This is important for later. He says that, quotes, his wife won't be doing anything. He storms out of the room, and my mum then tells this doctor, who also put this in the medical note, that she, quote, fears for her life because she knows if she doesn't do the treatments, she will die, but she also knows that Larry won't let her. Larry becomes abusive. He starts becoming verbally, mentally, and physically abusive. He drained their joint bank account so my mum couldn't even buy herself bread, cut the brake lines on her car, and more, and did everything in his power to stop her from doing treatments. Let's say she had treatments twice a week, every week. She'd maybe be able to get to half of those if my spouse or myself drove her. My mum ended up moving into my unit in the basement, and I started defending my mum against Larry. I told him, quote, "If he didn't stop, I'd be doing everything in my power to ensure that he is held responsible for her death." He proceeded to laugh at me and told me, quote, "I'm a woman, what can I do to him?" His abuse then extended towards me at pretty much any chance he got. Well, I hired my mum a lawyer and changed my program to criminal law as quickly as I could, so I could learn everything I could with how the system works. I then handed in evidence and we started to build a case. It took 8 months of collecting evidence through security cameras I set up in the home. Now, Larry knew of these cameras. I had nothing, and he was aware he was on camera in certain areas of the home. During this time, I had already been pre-approved by the bank to purchase his 50% of the house. All he had to do was sign one piece of paper and agree, and within 30 days, he could have gotten $250,000. He refused because, quote, "I wasn't going to get his house when he was going to put my whole family on the street." And yes, this was all caught on camera. Larry was handed a summons by my lawyer's office to attend court with us. Well, he refused. He said he knew more than the lawyers and wasn't going to show. Because of this, we ended up winning in court and sole possession of the home was given to my mother. All his assets are locked and put under my mum's supervision to prevent him from liquidating them. He has a restraining order on him from the house and my mum, and he isn't allowed to leave Canada. He was evicted by the police that night and locks were changed, etc. With him being out of the home, we got my mum onto ODSP. And she was able to finally and safely start treatments because she now had access to the transportation offers through ODSP and the cancer societies. ODSP stands for the Ontario Disability Support Program, apparently. My lawyer and her also broke the joint tenancy on the home and became tenants in common. This is also super important, and pretty much while my mum was still lucid, set everything so that when/if she did pass, the house and everything she owned would come to me. For those who don't know, in Canada, you have two options when buying a house. Joint tenants are for married couples who want to split a home 50-50. In these situations, if one passes, the home automatically goes to the spouse. Tenants in common is when you can say buy a house with more than one other party and everyone owns their equity separately. In the event of a death, they go by the will and that equity can be transferred to whoever is listed. Google for more details. In the next 2 years before my mum eventually lost her fight to cancer, we kept going to court with Larry. He kept refusing to deal or even sign divorce papers, not taking offers, etc. I became my mum's caregiver and was the one who cared for her in every aspect. Closer to the end, Larry told not only my lawyer, but also the judge in a court settlement meeting that he, quote, refuses to sign or deal with anything else. He would also not attend any more meetings because he would wait for my mum to die and take everything. He was told then in court by the judge and lawyers, two of them, that wouldn't happen. He laughed, and yeah, that was the last anyone has heard from Larry. My mum passed away this year, not due to cancer, but due to a complication from the cancer. She had a tumor rupture and it caused an upper gastro bleed. She died in my arms. There was nothing I could do for her. I was diagnosed with PTSD from the traumatic event. This is also important, and I still somehow managed to handle everything. Larry has changed all his contacts and hasn't updated the courts on his whereabouts. After she passed, my mum's lawyer took her will and we went through the probate court system. Since my mum had been granted sole possession and, as per her will and the videos that my lawyer and the judges had all set up prior to her passing, everything was to be transferred to me. I had to sign some paperwork with the judges just agreeing to everything that had been set up, but it was all done legally and properly. I also took all of my mum's medical notes, including that note from the original doctor that spoke about Larry's outburst and my mum's fears. Unfortunately, both my lawyer and the judge said they can't hold him responsible for her death, but they all do agree that his actions did lead to her death. I'm still in court as we speak to try and push this through to have him criminally held responsible. I know it's a long shot, but I'm still trying. My lawyer is saying it's like a 60-40 chance, but she's seeing what she can do based on the evidence and confessions we have from him. There's a chance, but it's slim. The home and everything she owned got transferred to me, so I am now the registered owner of the house with sole physical possession. I've also been granted her life insurance, which all went to paying off her debt, including their joint line of credit credit card, etc. And pretty much everything he thought he'd be getting by waiting for her to die was given to me and approved by the judge. I have agreed with the courts, because I'm not a bad person, that I will honour the 50% buyout that was agreed upon when we started this whole fight. However, any debt he owes me, because he still owns the 50% in equity only, will be deducted from the buyout balance. We will also not be getting the house reappraised because of the renovations this house needs that I will be paying for. He now owes me over $50,000 in debt, which is climbing based on any renovations I do to the home during my ownership, paying off the joint mortgage and paying off the joint line of credit. My lawyers also want to go for 50% of all legal fees and 50% of anything I lose due to my PTSD diagnosis from all of this. But they need to find him first. Now, since no one can contact Larry, my province here in Canada only has a 2-year statutory limit for having claims open in courts. The claim he opened to get the house back has been thrown out in the court system, saying that he has abandoned claim and title. I showed up in court, but he did not. After some internet digging, my friend has found that Larry has taken off to Mexico and is not even in Canada anymore, which also violates the court order that was placed on him when he was evicted from the home. He was not to leave Canada until things were settled. So that's a whole different story there, and my lawyer is handling that part because that has nothing to do with me. But until he returns, the courts are not worried about really anything. Now, in the event he doesn't return, and let's just say he dies in Mexico, my lawyer and the judge have advised me we will use his estates with the court for the 50% equity to be transferred to me in collateral to the debt that is owed. However, I still own the house, I have sole possession, and in all legal aspects, the house belongs to me. If he does come back, he will be facing repercussions for leaving Canada, but if he does try and reopen another claim, he can't. Since the claim was set as abandoned, my lawyer is saying he can't open another one. So he'll be stuck either A, taking the offer, or B, not taking it, and I just do what I wrote above and petition his estate and the courts. But either way, in any situation, he will not be getting back possession of the home. So, yeah. At this point, I'm still going to court to have him held legally responsible. The courts and lawyers are all on my side, and they were the ones who granted me the house and everything. So I legally took everything from him because his actions led to my mum's delay in getting treatments and thus killed my mum. Well, there you go. That is justice personified. I love the fact that you're going to continue to work on this seemingly until this guy suffers. Like, who knows what might have happened? If there weren't those delays in treatment, your mum may well still be with us. In fact, it's actually quite likely that she could be, which is a horrible thought to have. And I can't believe this guy got away with what he did. But yeah, there has to be justice. Hopefully, this is going to be over pretty soon. It seems like you've had an extremely rough few years. But yeah, I don't know where this guy is, what's going to happen. But at least the courts are all on your side. And it seems as if everyone that is involved in this, from a legal standpoint, is backing you. And no matter what really happens next, I mean, say your ex-stepdad comes back, say he doesn't, you know, if you never see him again, I think you'll still be all right based on what I've just read there. So yeah, I mean, you've been through such a hard period. I hope it's going to get easier now, but again, let's see what happens.